Deep in the Pocket. Written by Lainey Davis. Narrated by Crystal Crockett. Chapter 1. I hear the classroom door creak open just before the lecture is supposed to begin. I whip around in my seat, irritated to see who just dared to show up so late for this class. I could barely contain myself when I saw Matt Jacobs was teaching a statistics elective at Stone Creek University this semester. He was a fellow at the American Statistical Association, for God's sake, one of the most distinguished people in the field, and he's here at my college. So yeah, it bugs me that Talon Kelly is even here, let alone sauntering in just as Matt is about to begin speaking. Talon, the Claw, Kelly thinks he's God's gift to this school, and that's probably because everyone constantly reassures him that he is, in fact, our savior. He's the quarterback of the football team, of course. He probably hasn't seen the inside of a textbook since he learned how to read, if he ever learned that much. I remember that he hurt his knee this past fall, and sure enough, he clatters into class with a pair of crutches and some enormous brace. "Sorry, guys," he says, his deep voice smooth and condescending. "I'm moving a little slowly these days." I look into my notebook, hiding behind the curtain of my straight brown hair as he hops down the aisle of the desks and into a seat behind me. Matt Jacob leans into the podium and says kindly, "Take your time, Mr. Kelly," he shouts, and I feel his breath on my neck as he leans forward to tuck his crutches under his seat. "But everyone calls me Claw." With a chuckle, our instructor says, "Well, Mr. Kelly, most people call me Dr. Jacobs, but I was just about to tell your classmates here that this semester, I'd like you all to call me Matt." My jaw drops at this. I'm really going to have to get over being starstruck, especially when I go to office hours. Matt continues, "This semester, we're going to explore post-college applications of statistics. Everything from sports analytics to biostatistics." I hang on his every word. I've been a statistics nerd as far back as I can remember. Oh, I know all about Talon Kelly and his football performance. My high school required everyone to participate in sports in some capacity. Having absolutely zero interest in playing a sport, I opted instead to keep stats. I begrudgingly learned the ins and outs of football. I'm not humble about statistics. I'm really good at what I do, and I help the coaching staff recognize patterns they weren't seeing. I might not like football very much, but I sure did know which defense teams were more likely to cover the open, deep field for long passes. I interned in the stats booth here at SCU a few semesters, too. It was a good experience for me. I got to work with some interesting new software, and D1 college football is a high-pressure environment to be keeping stats. I probably would have enjoyed staring at the muscle-bound men I was tracking if I'd had time, but the mood in the stats booth was urgent and fierce. I can tell you all about the Claw and his pass completion percentages, and now that I see him up close, I understand more about what I've heard about his action stats with SCU girls. But what I really want to do is study biostatistics with Matt Jacobs at Dartmouth. I can't let the Claw distract me from why I'm in this elective. Before I can stop myself, I've drifted far into a fantasy involving Matt and me being honored by the National Institutes of Health for our contributions to the world of infectious disease. I jump and squeak when I feel a hand on my shoulder. "Help a guy out?" Talon lets his hand linger on my shoulder, and I'm stunned by my body's response to his touch. His hand is warm and firm through my sweater, and I feel the blood rush to the place where his fingers rest above my collarbone. I stare at his hand, which is nearly as large as my face. "Sorry, what?" Class is over and people are filing out of the room. Talon slides his hand from my back and smiles at me. He's objectively handsome. No, that's not even the right word. Talon Kelly is sexy. I let my eyes linger a moment too long on his dazzling blue eyes. He repeats, "Can you help me out? I can't reach my crutches, and I can't bend all the way forward with this brace on." I look more closely at the yards of padding and Velcro immobilizing his leg. Talon raises his eyebrows as I stare at his leg, apparently wondering if I'm completely daft. "Sorry," I mutter, leaning forward to pick up the crutches. Our hands touch as he takes the crutches from me, and I feel a sizzle as he begins to hoist himself into a standing position. He smells clean, like soap and laundry detergent, and he's chewing mint gum in the side of his mouth. He grunts softly as he shifts his weight onto the crutches. I stand up next to him and feel dwarfed by his height. I never realized how very large the players were. From up in the box, they all just seem like little stick figures.
See anything you like?
His deep voice jars me, again, from staring. I flush. This is really unlike me. I had meant to follow Dr. Matt, to his office hours, but here I am standing next to Talon and his damn crutches. Talon winks at me. Gross. I start wondering how many girls he's tried that on before, but then he winces, and I'm reminded that he's actually injured. Are you in a lot of pain? I ask, gesturing towards his knee. He stares into the distance. I think for a moment he's going to crack another joke, but he looks down at me and says,
It doesn't feel awesome, I'll give you that.
He crutches away, and I watch him go, forgetting about my big plans to cozy up with my stats professor. Chapter 2. I'm pretty irritated when the claw saunters into class late again the next session. Matt just smiles and waves him in, but come on. Can't he get one of those football staff to drive him around in a golf cart or something so he isn't interrupting the rest of us? Once again, he limps up to the desk behind me. Once again, he sprawls out so that his foot is underneath my seat and his crutches snag the strap of my backpack. I whip around in my seat and shoot him daggers with my eyes. Talon winks at me again, infuriating me. I'm about to tell him off when Matt begins class.
All right, folks. Here comes your least favorite part of the semester. Research projects.
There is a collective groan, and Matt holds out his hands.
With partners, I know, it's awful, but this is life.
As people begin to complain, Matt continues.
There isn't a career in statistics that will not involve collaborative research. And there isn't a research project you'll encounter in life where you won't want to fire someone on your project team.
Matt pulls out a jar of slips of paper. He makes a joke about the odds being in our favor and starts to pull out pairs of names. I don't recognize anyone in this class, so I can't do anything other than calculate the probability of me being partnered with Talon, until I hear him call my name.
Serena Sanders.
I raise my hand. He nods.
Let's see who you'll be working with.
There's a pause as he rummages through his jar of names. And of course he says,
Talon Kelly. Well, you're already sitting near each other, so at least you don't have to move.
A few minutes later, the pairs are assigned and we are turned loose to exchange contact information and make a plan for the research project. I sigh and start smoothing out my hair. It's long and straight, and I usually keep it back in a ponytail while I'm working, but today I wore it down. I wanted to look my best, so I actually blew it dry this morning. I realize how stupid that is to get all dolled up for my stats professor, but I can't help it. I'm totally starstruck. I sigh and scoop up my notebook, turning around to face Talon, who is still sitting sprawled in his chair, bulging arms crossed across his chest that seems to be bursting out of his tight SCU t-shirt. Neither of us say anything for a bit, but eventually he says,
You going to give me your phone number? Invite me back to your place to research, baby?
He winks. Jesus, Talon, does this crap actually work for you? You think I'm going to sleep with you and then do the entire research project myself? He laughs.
I know you're going to sleep with me, baby. I've seen you looking at the claw.
I start stuffing my books back into my bag and huff at him. You're referring to yourself in the third person now? Is that it? Of course I'm looking at you, Talon. You're limping around like the Bionic Man. You don't exactly blend in. He reaches out for my arm, his fingertips surprisingly soft on my skin below my own SCU t-shirt.
All right. I'll grant you that. Hey, why do you look familiar?
He furrows his brow while he looks at me.
Did we already sleep together? Is that it? Is that why you're so huffy?
You are absolutely disgusting, Talon Kelly. No, I have not slept with you. I rip a sheet of paper out of my notebook and write down my cell number and email address and slam it into his chest. Get in touch with me when you're ready to get serious about this project. This class is important to me. He chuckles softly and looks at my info. I hate that I keep staring at the blonde streaked curls sticking out from his backward ball cap. His hair grows in tight ringlets that I've seen on the Jumbotron, stuck to his forehead with sweat when he pulls his helmet off during games. I remind myself that nobody that good looking is ever going to be a kind person. I storm out of class before it's over. I'm halfway back to my apartment before I realize I've missed the discussion and homework assignments. Chapter 3. My roommate Alyssa is home on a break between classes when I stomp through the front door. Bad day with Professor Dreamy? She laughs, pulling a bowl of mac and cheese from the microwave. Liz, I left before I even got to hear Professor Dreamy's lecture today. Whoa, girl, what the hell happened? I tell her about being partnered with Talon, about his lame pickup lines. She chews thoughtfully and says, You know what you need to do, right? I raise an eyebrow at her and shake my head. You need to go to Dreamy's office hours. This is the perfect excuse. Oh, Professor Dreamy, I just can't work with that awful jock. I need a real man. A nerdy man like you to guide me with your calculator. Shut up, I say, throwing a napkin at her. But she's right. I should go to office hours and at least get today's homework if I can't plead my case for a partner reassignment. Alyssa teases me mercilessly as I recheck my hair and walk back up to campus towards the stats building. I knock lightly on Professor Jacobs' door and hear him say, Come in. I open the door and he smiles. Serena, right? I'm not good with names. That's right. I sit in the chair opposite his desk. He leans forward, his hands clasped on top of the papers on his desk. I take a deep breath. I just have to tell you, I'm such a huge fan of yours. I mean, you're an ASA fellow, and you're here at SCU. He laughs. You know about the ASA, do you? My eyes widen. Of course. I mean, don't your students usually know your bio? He keeps laughing. Serena, he says, slapping the desk. My students usually don't give a shit about school. I feel my face contort as I absorb this statement. Of course I knew I was on the fringe of studious students here at SCU, but I assumed at Dartmouth things would be different. Really? I just thought you'd be used to students who are more driven. He leans back in his chair. Nah, so what's up? I open my mouth to begin, but he interrupts. Wait, let me guess. I close my mouth and raise an eyebrow at him. You don't want to work with that football guy, right? I exhale. He continues. Serena, you know your professors know that you do all the work on these sorts of team projects, right? Like, it's not going to surprise me. It's not that so much as he's just so conceited. He's a cocky jerk. Professor Jacob, Matt, nods and sits forward again. You want to work in statistics. You're going to be rubbing shoulders with a lot of cocky jerks who try to get in your pants. I flush, feeling the heat spread from my chest to the tip of my ears. And then, I don't know what comes over me. I feel like I'm possessed by some crazed spirit. I tilt my head to one side, lean forward, and touch Matt Jacobs' hand. I say in my voice sounding much calmer than I feel, but it's not his pants I want to get in, Professor. The air rushes out of the room. I feel the atmosphere shift. Professor Jacobs stands and walks around the desk. He opens the door to his office, then stands stiffly in the doorway. Serena, look, you're going to have to work something out with Mr. Kelly. I'm sorry, but the project has been assigned. Now, did you have anything further to discuss? I feel the shame of what I've done rise in my chest. I fear I'm going to be sick, my heart pounding. I just made a pass at a professor I want to study with throughout graduate school. What the hell was I thinking? My breath comes in ragged gasps, but the studious collegiate inside me manages to say, Can you tell me the chapters we discussed in class and let me know the homework? I write robotically in my notebook and practically run from his office. I burst into the cold January air and suck in great gasps of air outside before walking home as quickly as I can. My hands shake so badly, I can't unlock the door to my apartment, and when Alyssa pulls it open, I fall inside, sobbing against her shirt. I made a pass at Professor Jacobs, I shriek. What am I going to do? Alyssa pulls me tightly into her chest and rubs my hair. She looks up at the clock and says, It's 4 p.m. on a Thursday, Serena. We're going to go and drink tequila until you forget this ever happened. Chapter 4. It's morning. I can tell that it's morning, but I am definitely not in my room. My senses feel dull as I try to make sense of my surroundings. I realize I'm not wearing any pants. I shift around a bit and discover I'm lying on a giant bed covered with a bright white duvet. I open both eyes and I see I'm in someone's bedroom. But whose? The room smells masculine, like spicy deodorant, but not body odor. The gray walls have SCU football posters. There's a tidy desk and a dresser. I can see the door to the closet is ajar and there's a coat rack with... Shit, I groan. The coat rack has a letter jacket with Kelly embroidered in giant letters. I am in Talon Kelly's bedroom, and I'm not wearing pants. I look down. I'm not wearing the t-shirt I started out in either.
"Oh, are you awake, Sanders?"
A deep voice comes from the doorway. Talon walks into the room, and I instinctively pull the covers up to my chin. He looks completely normal apart from the knee brace. Meanwhile, I feel like I got hit by a truck.
"Hey, easy. I'm not going to jump your bones. But I do have to go soon. I've got PT in a little while."
He hands me a bottle of water from the pocket of his sweatpants and crutches over to the bed. I ask him, "What happened last night? I got carried away?" He laughs at this.
"You sure did. I never saw anything like it. Usually, drunk girls are desperate to get into my bed. You fought me pretty hard."
I drink the water, waiting for him to explain. He starts to tell me how he ran into Alyssa and me at the bar after I'd had half a pitcher of margaritas. He and his roommates had come in for a six-pack, and I'd begun shouting at him.
"You were blaming me for whatever it was that led you to your sorry state,"
Talon says, still laughing.
"Alyssa invited you both up to the apartment to watch Spaceballs with us. She and Smith excused themselves to his bedroom, and well..."
Talon, Kelly, if you tell me you took advantage of me while I was blackout drunk, I swear to God.
"What? Fuck no."
He seems really insulted and explains that I'd spilled nacho cheese all over my clothes during the movie.
"I threw your stuff in the wash and gave you my shirt, gave you my damn bed, and slept on the couch, knee brace and all."
I feel my flush return. As if to drive home his point, he begins to unwrap something he had hanging from one of his crutches, a grocery bag with my jeans and shirt inside. I feel sheepish and look down. "Thank you," I say, my voice soft as I try to hide behind my hair. Talon reaches a hand forward and brushes my hair aside, and I am taken aback by the kindness of his gesture as much as the rush of heat I feel where his skin touched my face. His blue eyes go dark as he asks,
"What had you so worked up yesterday?"
I exhale and shake my head. "It's too humiliating."
"What? More humiliating than spilling nacho cheese all over yourself when you could have been banging the quarterback?"
I throw an empty water bottle at his chest and pull the covers over my head. He persists.
"Hey, Serena, I am fresh from surgery and slept on a sofa a foot shorter than me. You owe me your tale of woe."
Ah, it's so bad. I take a deep breath and speak quickly. I made a pass at Professor Jacobs, and he didn't even acknowledge it, basically, but he pretty much asked me to leave his office. Talon whistles. I pull the covers down so my face peeks out, and he flops back on the bed next to me.
"That was pretty ballsy of you. So you like older dudes, hey?"
He lies on his side, his head propped on his hand, his eyes teasing. Not normally. It's just, he's like a celebrity in the stats world. I've been obsessed with him for years, and now he's here this semester teaching. God, I ruined everything. I feel tears start welling as I talk about what happened. How can I even go back to class now? As soon as I say it, I start crying, which makes me feel even more embarrassed, if such a thing is possible. God, what am I even doing? I shouldn't be telling you all of this. He puts a hand on my arm.
"Hey, it's okay, you know. You're my research partner, right? I've got your back."
I look over at him, blinking tears away, trying to slow my breathing. My God, he is good looking, I think. How am I supposed to just go back to class after I made a pass at the professor? He keeps his hand on my arm, and I feel my pulse quicken. I become increasingly aware that I'm lying half-dressed in Talon Kelly's bed with Talon Kelly, the length of his body mere inches from my own.
"Look, Serena, I know this might come as a shock to you, but I make passes at girls all the time, and sometimes they even turn me down. And you know what? Fuck that. You can't let it ruin your day."
I laugh a little and catch myself staring into his intense blue gaze. My arm is stiff beneath his fingers, which wrap around my bones. His hands are so large, and up close, I can see the top muscles of his arms. Who turns you down, Talon? Chapter 5. His fingers begin to stroke my skin lightly.
You did, the other day.
He doesn't let me break his gaze. I shudder as he drops his hand to my body beneath the duvet. He walks his fingers up my chest and places his hand on my collarbone. I'm sure he can feel my heart pounding through the material of his t-shirt, and my breath catches as his thumb rubs along the notch at the top of my sternum.
Anyone would have to be crazy to turn down an offer from you, Serena.
I open my mouth to say something, but he leans in and kisses me. His lips are soft and thick, pressing into mine hungrily. He grazes my bottom lip with his teeth and nudges my lips apart with his tongue. A moan escapes my throat as he adjusts his weight until he is lying against me. I can feel every firm inch of his body through the duvet, and I hesitantly move my hands onto his rounded shoulders. Talon's hand on my chest begins to slide down until he's cupping my breast through the shirt, his palm pressing against my stiff nipple, fingers gently massaging the soft weight of my tender skin. Suddenly, I want nothing more than to feel his lips around the taut peaks, to feel his thumb rubbing the sensitive tip until I melt beneath his touch. Talon, I whisper, and as if he's read my mind, he dips his curly head, sliding soft kisses along my jaw and chin, sliding down until he flicks my nipple through the fabric. The material is wet and hot from his mouth as he works first one, then the other breast, while his hands wander along my body. I wind my fingers into his hair as he sucks my breast into his mouth. I yelp as his teeth graze my nipple and he laughs, the deep rumble of his voice shaking against my chest. When I imagine the claw with one of his conquests, I never stop to think about how good a lover he must have become with so much practice. Conquest or not, I felt very, very aroused by what he was doing to my nipples. I run my hand along his chest and stroke the firm expansion of his body as he returns to my mouth, our tongues clashing hungrily. I feel the rock-hard length of Talon's cock against my hip, and I realize things are about to get real. When he moves to kiss my ear, I say, "Talon, I need to tell you something." Oh, shit, that feels good. He has a hand back on my breast as he kisses me, and I swear he's found a string connecting my nipple to my core, because my whole body is vibrating from his attentions. Suddenly, there's a pounding knock at the door and a deep voice shouts,
"Yo, Claw, if you want to ride to PT, I'm leaving in 5.
Talon groans and rolls onto his back. My eyes are wide as I pull the covers up again. He shouts,
"Yep, thanks, man. I'll be right out."
I rustle along the covers for the bag of clothes Talon had brought me and try to slip my jeans on under the blankets. "I'm sorry," I start to say.
Hey,
He puts a hand on my shoulder.
we'll continue this later. I want to hear what you were going to tell me, and I definitely want to hear you moan like that again.
Before I can say a word, he hoists himself up from the bed, gathers his crutches, and starts making his way out of the room. Chapter 6. After I pull on my clothes, I walk into the living room to find Alyssa looking bedraggled. She grins at me and puts an arm around my shoulder. As we walk home, she tells me all about sleeping with CJ Smith. I mean, he's a total man whore. Obviously, I'm not going to see him, but it was fantastic sex. She buys me a coffee and tells me the highlights before grabbing my arm. Shit, Serena. I keep forgetting you've still got your V card. Unless maybe you don't anymore. She raises an eyebrow, but I just smile into my coffee. Still carrying the card, I'm afraid. I started out college so busy studying that I just never had time to date anyone. Now, as a junior, I still study hard, but the idea of romance seems less important somehow. I mostly want to get it out of the way. So, do you think you'll give it up to Talon? Did you guys do something? You seemed super drunk last night. I briefly fill her in on the story, but thinking of Talon's mouth skillfully lavishing my nipples causes me to flush again, so I changed the subject back to how I should approach my stats class with Matt next week. By Tuesday morning, I'm ready to walk into class and pretend like nothing happened. I'm wearing my usual uniform of dark jeans, SU t-shirt, and SU green Saucony. I've got my hair thrown into what I hope is my least attractive sloppy bun, and I sit in my usual seat up front, totally avoiding eye contact. but prepared to raise my hand and join in the discussion. Just before the bell rings, as is becoming a habit, Talon disrupts the class by clattering in the door. Today, for some frustrating reason, he doesn't take the seat behind me. Instead, he nudges my leg with his crutch and says,
"Hey, move in one."
I furrow my brow, not quite believing he really expects me to move out of my seat when there are half a dozen empty chairs to choose from. But he smiles and keeps poking my leg with his crutch. I roll my eyes and slide over. When he sits down, he seems to spill from the chair until he takes all of my space as well. "What the hell, Talon?" He leans in much closer than I'd like and whispers,
"I want to see if I can make you moan again in class."
Talon must see the furious look on my face because he leans back towards his own chair, smiling, and says,
"Easy there. I can wait until later."
I can barely pay attention to the discussion. My thoughts zoom between embarrassment, admiration for Matt Jacobs, and the memory of Talon's expert tongue. I had been about to tell him I was a virgin when we were fooling around in his bed. The more I think about it, though, the less I want him to know. He's not wrong about making me moan. I can tell that sleeping with him will be amazing. But I also know Talon is a ladies' man. Whatever this is, it will not be a relationship, and he doesn't seem like he'd be interested in being anyone's first time.
"Serena, Miss Sanders."
I jolt back to the present moment. Matt Jacob is calling on me. Shit. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? From the corner of my eye, I can see Talon chuckling. Matt says,
"I was asking your thoughts about data presentation with sports statistics."
I feel relief flood over me. I can ad-lib about sports statistics for hours. Oh, right. Well, for something like running or golf, I think a dot plot works really well. But for more complex sports statistics, you're really looking at so many charts. Most teams and coaches rely on discussion and analysts for developing their strategy. But when Coach Burns here at SCU opts for the short pass and bubble screen and short yardage situations, for instance, he's looking at rushing and passing trends over time. I can feel the class staring at me with open mouths. Matt meets my eyes and there is no trace of awkwardness. He smiles and nods.
"Right on."
Talon snaps his fingers and blurts,
"Shit, that's where I know you from. You're the stat girl."
I do not turn to look at him, but Matt raises his eyebrows at Talon's interruption. Talon continues,
"She's Serena. She's in the stat booth for the SCU football team. She's the only girl up there."
Matt smiles and looks back at me.
"Is that right?"
I start to wish I could fall into a hole into the floor, but I answer, "Well, it was just an internship. I actually prefer biostatistics, so I won't be going back next year." Matt nods and takes over the sports statistics discussion again. The rest of the class goes by in a blur, and at the end, I quickly gather my things. My intention is to leave as quickly as possible and avoid talking to either Talon or Matt. But of course, Talon's massive body is blocking my exit route.
"Why didn't you say anything?"
he asks me as he lumbers out of his seat. "What? You mean when I was spilling nacho cheese on myself at your apartment?"
"No, I mean later. Is that what you were going to tell me?"
I shrug. "Talon, I know this might be a surprise to you, but keeping stats for the football team was just an internship for me. It's not like it's an important part of my life." He's finally on his feet, and I make a move to push past him, but he puts a hand on my shoulder again. I feel that same heat, that electric charge that spreads through my body like water in the desert. He says,
"We still need to pick a time to meet up for our research project."
Of course, his schedule is impossible, even in the off-season, but I agree to meet him around 4 in the football building between his physical therapy and his weight training sessions. He finally lets me walk past, and I head to my next class, relieved to be away from the elective I thought would be my favorite college experience. Chapter 7. I'm no stranger to the football building. I've spent a lot of time in here talking about otter strategy based on game stats. Not that anyone ever asked my input on strategy. Sometimes I was allowed to talk about trends during the meetings, but it was mostly the good old boys talking about the gridiron. I have not, however, been into the players' area. When I come in, I see Darla at the reception desk, and she greets me warmly. "Didn't think we'd see you back here, Serena." "I'm here for something different this time," I tell her. "I'm supposed to meet Talon Kelly to work on a class project. Can you tell me which way the physical therapy room is?" Darla gives me a look that suggests she knows things are never just book business with Talon. I flush but sputter. "He's my research partner for a statistics elective." She laughs and points down the hall. As I walk closer to the PT room, I hear someone groaning. No, it's more like a roar. I stop a few feet from the door because I can see that it's Talon. He is shirtless, wearing just a pair of otter green mesh shorts. He has a smaller knee brace on than the one he wears to class, and the trainer is urging him through a series of squats. His body is impeccable. His ab muscles have ab muscles, it seems like, and I can't draw my eyes away from his chest. The shorts sit low on his hips, right below the V of his lower abs. As I move my eyes upwards, I see the bulging muscles of his arms, and then he roars again. The trainer has him moving in between a series of orange cones now, and Talon's face is so fierce, so determined. I can't tell if he's in pain or just working hard to finish the series of exercises. I was in the booth when he blew his ACL last semester. The Otters were going for 2 after a late touchdown, and Talon got slammed by the other team's cornerback when he tried to run the ball. I had to bite my tongue about the whole thing. I mean, of course you never know for sure what's going to happen in a game, but I'd read the stats on that cornerback from Kentucky. I sure wouldn't have pushed the odds and run the ball against him. Now, Talon is surrounded by an entire crew of people. He's got teammates in there cheering for him. He's got an entourage of physical therapists and assistant coaches shouting, "Come on, Claw, dig in!" As I watch them, I realize more than ever that I don't belong here. I walk back down the hall to sit in some armchairs while I wait for Talon to come out. A few minutes later, I hear the parade of Talon and his crew. He starts shaking hands and they dissipate, but he catches my eye and limps over.
Hey, look, no more crutches.
I want to point out that he also has no books, no pen, no paper. But I settle for no shirt either, I see. He sinks into the armchair next to me and leans back, hands behind his head.
You like what you see?
He moves his muscles so his pecs dance up and down, like some sleazy lifeguard from Baywatch or something. Gross, Talon. Come on.
All right. I mean, I have to go lift right from here, so if I do put on a shirt, that's just another shirt for the maintenance people to have to wash. Do you really want me making more work for the maintenance crew?
I roll my eyes at him. How about Serena? I really appreciate you working with my super tight schedule and putting up with my funk so we can start our project. I cross my arms across my chest and stare at him. His face shifts.
You're right. It's really cool of you to meet me here. I'm sorry I'm half naked. Okay?
I nod. I pull out my copy of the assignment and he shrugs, obviously not having his at hand. I skim and say, so we basically have to pick an area of statistics to discuss. Talk about some work being done in the field, current research, job descriptions, that sort of thing. He says,
easy. Sports statistics, right?
I shake my head. No way. I'm going into biostatistics, and that's Professor Jacobs' field of interest. I told you. I just did football stats because...
You actually never said why you were doing it. But I know you must kick ass at it because there aren't other undergrads up there. I asked.
This surprises me enough that I dropped the assignment sheet. You asked about my internship?
I did. Once I remembered who you were today, I asked about you last fall too, but only because I wanted to hit on you.
He grins but continues.
But here's the weird thing, Serena. None of the other guys claim to have slept with you, and I know you've been up there for 3 seasons. How do you avoid the advances of 80-plus college football players for 3 years?
I start to chew on the inside of my cheek, uncertain about this conversation. I try to keep to myself, I say. I just mostly avoid the players. He waves this suggestion away but says,
Well, then I remembered you told me you'd made a pass at our professor, so I just assumed you must be into someone on the staff.
My face is crimson now and I feel hot. What? You think I'm sleeping with the staff?
I'm just trying to figure you out, sweetheart. This might surprise you, but I usually don't have to work this hard to get into a girl's pants.
Before I can stop to think, I'm blurting. You're not even working hard. And I mean, you've already had me in your bed, without pants, and your roommate interrupted. I look over my shoulder, but thankfully nobody is around. Talon laughs.
I probably will never forgive him for that. Anyway, don't you think the easiest solution is if we present about sports statistics?
This might surprise you, Talon, but I don't just do things because they are easy. We're going to do biostatistics. He runs his hands through his sweaty curls.
What's your deal, Serena?
Excuse me? He looks at me, his blue eyes softer now.
What happened to you? I can tell something did.
Oh, I don't usually tell people about my background. Apart from Alyssa, I don't think many people at SCU know my story, but then nobody has ever asked me point blank to talk about it before. You don't really want to know all that. He puts his hand on my leg and leans close.
I absolutely want to know, and that's not just because I'm hitting on you. I feel like I have to know your deal, or it's going to drive me crazy.
I exhale slowly. Okay, so my mom died when I was a baby, and I was raised by my dad.
Shit, Serena. I'm so sorry.
It gets worse, trust me. Chapter 8. Talon meets my eyes, and I'm really moved by the fact that he actually seems to care. I half expected his entourage to pop up to respond to each part of the story with groans and backslaps. I continue, stuttering just a bit with emotion. So my dad was head football coach at the private school near where we lived. Football was all there was at my house, so even though I wanted nothing to do with it, I had no choice. Plus, to be enrolled at that school, students had to be involved in sports in some way. I kept stats.
That's a pretty cool rule. I like that, Talon says. I make an annoyed face, and he says, Sorry, stats, your dad.
When I was 16, my dad got really sick, really quickly. He had somehow gotten meningitis and then wound up contracting pneumonia in the hospital. I close my eyes. It is still painful for me to talk about what happened in my late teens. A tear leaks out and slowly rolls down one cheek as I say, eyes still closed. He died that fall. I open my eyes and Talon is staring at me, his mouth slightly open. He moves one hand to my leg, gently rubbing my knee, and says,
God, Serena, that's really awful.
I start wiping my face and breathing rapidly. I shouldn't have dumped all that on you. I'm sorry. Now you must think I'm such a Debbie Downer. He shakes his head.
Hey, I made you tell me. That shit's rough, Serena. What happened to you then? I mean, you're an orphan.
My dad's brother took me in. He lived closest, and I didn't have to change schools. He says I always have a place there to come back to, but I try not to. I mean, it's better if I'm at school, working.
So, how'd you get the Stone Creek football internship?
Talon asks, still rubbing my knee. His hand feels reassuring, friendly. I like it. Oh, I say. Well, Coach Burns actually knew my dad pretty well. I mean, some of the players at my high school went on to play here. Anyway, Coach wrote to me after my dad died and asked if he could ever do anything to let him know. I shrug. I don't know why I asked him if I could be up in the booth. The friendly hand on my knee seems different now, searching. I feel the tip of his finger sliding along the seam of my jeans, and I like how my body is responding. Heat seeps from his hand through the fabric, warming my leg. My breath catches, and he keeps stroking my thigh. He says,
Do what you know, right?
An eternity passes, and I'm not sure what to do. What I want to do is run my own hand along his chest. But instead, I clutch the stats assignment sheet to my chest and close my eyes as Talon's finger creeps further up my thigh.
Serena.
His voice is husky, but then abruptly changes.
Look, I have to go work out now. What are you doing tomorrow afternoon?
He pulls his hand back down to my knee and my eyes snap open. Tomorrow? God, I feel like some sort of groupie. I need to pull myself together and regain control of this situation. Now that I've spilled my guts to Talon Kelly, I can't just casually have hot, steaming sex with him. For some reason, even though he could have any woman in a 50-mile radius, he seems interested in me. But I know how guys like him work. Once and done. He doesn't even talk to girls after he sleeps with them. I know this because I made the mistake of pulling up his fan page on Facebook and reading the many, many comments from women who'd been clawed.
Tomorrow,
he repeats.
We still haven't picked a topic for our project. I want to get this done before spring break so it's not hanging over my head before the green and gray game.
My mouth drops a little at this. Talon, I had no idea you actually cared about this report. It's his turn to look insulted.
I know I'm just supposed to be a dumb jock, Serena, but I'm really good at math. I need to keep my grades up to continue being a jock, and after spring break, I want to focus fully on my rehab so I can play in the green and gray game.
I'm sorry, Talon. I shouldn't have assumed you weren't, well, I shouldn't have assumed anything about you. I don't even know you. I start to gather up my stuff to leave.
You know me a little bit, he says. He stands up and hops around the chair towards the hall. You know me more than most women, actually. He winks and whispers. And you're going to know me a whole lot better. Talon hobbles towards the weight room as I sigh and head towards the exit. He shouts towards me, I'll text you about tomorrow. I watch him limp to the weight room and realize he must have actually kept the paper where I wrote down my contact information.
Wow, I whisper. Talon Kelly is going to text me. Chapter 9. I have a history exam in the morning, and when I turn my phone back on at lunchtime, I see a series of texts from an unknown number. I realize I have butterflies in my stomach because I know they're from Talon. What am I even doing? I think, warning myself not to get attached. Talon Kelly is a playboy. Do not get attached here. First message.
No practice or film or PT tonight. Can you meet about report?
An hour later, there was another message.
I promise to wear a shirt.
And just a few minutes ago,
are you avoiding the claw?
I smile, glad I've had my phone off for a few hours. I'm surprised by the thrill I feel at Talon's impatience. Before I decide about tonight, are you going to keep referring to yourself in the third person? Less than a minute later, my phone buzzes.
The claw makes no promises. My place at 7?
Will there be nachos?
Always, Serena. Better bring spare pants.
What are you smiling about? Alyssa walks in the door and I instinctively snap my phone against my chest. Nothing, just a text. She smiles. I know that look. You're texting a guy. Ooh, is it Talon? I flush and she laughs. We're going to get together tonight to study. We have our report. Yeah, sure. Study. Listen, you know what he's like, right? Like, you know he doesn't do relationships or anything? She grabs some food out of the fridge and sits with me at the table. I know, Liz. I know all about the claw. And before you ask, yes. I read the comments on his fan page. She takes a bite of her sandwich and swallows, saying, Not that I don't think you should do this. As you'll recall from our margarita fiasco, I, too, have lusted after an otter football god. And, like I said, it was fabulous. We eat in companionable silence for a few minutes before I ask, Do you think I should tell him? That it's my first time, I mean? I've been agonizing over this decision because guys like Talon don't do relationships, and I don't think he'll sleep with me if he knows it's my first time. I wouldn't, she says. You always remember your first time. Too much weight attached, you know. He won't want to be somebody's first. I confess that I'm worried he'll be able to tell, both because of my hopeless ignorance of what to do and, won't there be, like, blood? She laughs. This isn't Downton Abbey, Serena. You've used tampons for years. More likely, it'll hurt. Talon is a huge dude. He's got to have a pretty big claw. We joke some more about Talon's unfortunate nickname, and I try to focus on my homework before I head over to his apartment. But my mind is all over the place. Talon asked about my background. He knows my whole story. At minimum, we are friends now, so this doesn't fit his MO. I'm not some adoring fangirl waiting outside the locker room. And do I even want to take things to another level with this guy? What happened to focusing on my stats elective and leveraging this into my graduate school application? Here I am, distracted by some guy with a hot body, sick of being SU's oldest virgin. But he gave up his bed for you right after he'd had knee surgery. A small voice reminds me, I've seen a softer side of Talon Kelly, and I'm worried that I'm already expecting more from him than he'd be interested in giving. Why the hell is sex so complicated? I shout to Alyssa in the living room. She's watching reality television while she finishes making flashcards. She shouts, It doesn't need to be Serena. Just go bang some dude from the baseball team if it's too weird with Talon. You don't want anything to do with football guys anyway, right? I bite my bottom lip as I shove a spare outfit into my backpack with my stats stuff. She's right about that. I know all about that high-stakes world of football. Late nights at practice, long road trips, the pressure to win. I saw that all eat away at my dad for years. When he was admitted to the hospital, his big worry was not leaving a practice plan for his assistant coaches to follow with the team. Maybe Alyssa is right. I could go to any frat party and find some guy to sleep with to get it over with. But some guy wouldn't do those amazing things to my nipples. Well, I tell Alyssa as I check myself over in the full-length hall mirror. Here goes nothing. I'm wearing my usual jeans, sneakers, SCU shirt. I have my hair in 2 braids underneath my green beanie. By the time I zip into my puffy coat, I look ready to root for the Otters at a football game. Alyssa rolls her eyes at me. Please tell me you at least wore nice underwear, she says, putting a rubber band around her stack of flashcards. I stick my tongue out at her and head for Talon's apartment. His roommate CJ opens the door when I knock. He looks like he's about ready to step out, but he eyes me and turns on the charm.
Well, how can I help you this evening?
I'm here to see Talon, I say. We have stats together. CJ looks surprised.
Talon invited you up here?
He opens the door wider and I step into the hallway of their apartment.
Yo, Claw,
he shouts.
There's a chick here to see you.
I start to take off my coat. I see a coat tree in the corner and ask, is it so weird for Talon to have a girl over? CJ laughs.
Oh, we have a rule about that. We never bring them back here.
I remind him that Alyssa and I were here a few weeks ago.
Oh, shit. You're the nacho cheese girl.
He laughs and I flush, but smile.
That was an exception.
Talon comes out of the bedroom, and I can tell he's just showered. His curls are damp, and he smells fresh and clean. He's wearing jeans for once, and I catch myself staring at the way they hug his ass. I shake my head as he says,
Hey, Serena, you remember Smith. Smith, this is the chick I was telling you. Remember? From the stats booth?
He perks up at this and starts quizzing me, smiling when I can rattle off information about all the guys on the team. A few minutes later, Talon cocks an eyebrow at his roommate, and CJ slaps him on the back.
Later, bro. Adventure awaits. Good to see you again, Nacho.
As he leaves the apartment, I set my backpack on the dining room table. Am I going to be Nacho forever now? Talon grins and sits down. Chapter 10. Talon actually pulls out a notebook. He slides a huge dish of nachos towards me and starts eating them as he explains.
I was thinking, you keep insisting you want to do biostatistics. I want to obviously do sports. What if there was a way we could both get what we want?
I'm listening. I hesitantly pick up the chip with the least melted cheese on it.
First, you know you can't just report on the shit that Professor Jacob studies, right?
I flush and I feel my shoulders tense. I suppose you're right. He slides his printout towards me.
I looked him up. He studies hospital-based infections. I totally get why you want to study that in grad school. Because of what happened to your dad, right?
I look into his eyes, feeling tears well up in my own. I can only nod. He keeps talking.
I mean, you want to come back from that whole incident in his office. You can't just do your semester report on just the stuff he does. That won't impress him. It'll skeeve him out.
All right, Talon, I get it. I really want him to stop talking about this. It's humiliating to remember what happened in office hours. And it's humiliating that Talon was able to see through what I wasn't conscious of. Ugh. What kind of freak crosses the line from fangirl into starstruck kiss-up? So what's your idea for our topic? When Talon smiles, his whole face lights up. His grin is mesmerizing, so I'm staring right into his eyes when he says,
We can do something about ACL repair and recovery. Something that interests me, obviously, and still related to biology and health outcomes, which lets you suck up to the professor.
I start to nod my head. That's actually a really good plan. I reach for the nachos. I like it. Talon pumps his fist.
Yeah? Awesome. I even did some preliminary Googling to get us started. You should be excited to learn that female soccer players have more ACL tears than football players.
As he describes his research so far, I find that I really like talking about this with him. Within a half hour, we have a plan for dividing the research and a loose timeline for our report and presentation.
I can bring in my MRI scans for visual aids.
Talon jokes as I start to pack up my things. I laugh and say, I owe you an apology, I think. You're a really good research partner, Talon. He smiles and I start to walk towards the coat rack for my things. He reaches for my arm, his fingers grazing my wrist. I stop and he says,
It's still early. You want to have a beer with me? We can watch Survivor.
Is this turning into a date? I swallow and nod my head. Sure, I'd like that. He gets up from the table and I notice he's not wearing his knee brace. When I ask about it, he lights up.
Things are going so great in PT. They told me I only need the brace now when I'll be walking a long way or working out. I mean, you can see I'm still limping.
That's amazing, I say, taking the cold bottle of Sam Adams from him. You only had your surgery, like 2 weeks ago? I sit on the opposite end of the couch from him, but he spreads out until his leg nearly touches mine. He drapes his arm casually over the back of the sofa, and I feel the tingle of anticipation, unsure where we stand. I can't tell if I'm entering Talon's friend zone or if tonight might finally be the night I let go of my virginity. Talon props his injured leg up on the coffee table and pats his thigh.
The trainers promised to take good care of me, and it's working out. I'm pretty set on playing full contact again by summer training.
The show starts and we watch the credits, showing the intense faces of the contestants in the physical challenges. I look into his eyes without hesitating and say, "You work harder than all these folks, Talon. I saw you the other day at PT." He smiles. "You're really driven. You'll make it back as a starter." He reaches for one of my braids and fiddles with the end, running his fingers along the smooth bottom beneath the hair tie.
What are the odds of that, Serena? Tell me the statistics.
His face is serious now, and I'm not sure whether he really wants to know. "You must have Googled it," I say, my voice soft. I can see Talon is really vulnerable about this, about the idea that his career might be over. Before he went down against Kentucky, he was highly assumed to be an early NFL draft pick. Quarterbacks have a really high rate of return after an ACL tear. He slides closer to me on the couch, his arm around my shoulder now, fingers rubbing my arm.
"I love that you know that,"
he says in a husky voice. I open my mouth to say something else, but he leans in for a kiss. His left hand comes around to gently stroke my cheek as his lips press into mine. I taste the hoppy flavor of his beer and that uniquely Talon essence as his tongue slides into my mouth. It feels so good to be in his arms, to be making out with a guy, but I start to realize just how much I like that it's him in my arms. My mind starts racing. I want to savor what's happening right now, even as I worry about what it might all mean tomorrow. Then, Talon lets his right hand slide along my arm and onto my breast. I have to tell him my secret, and I know he will already be upset by what we've done. What I've done in not telling him. I blurt out, "Talon, I'm a virgin." His body grows very, very still.
"What?"
His voice sounds stiff, confused. "I'm a virgin. That's what I was trying to tell you last week in your room. I know that you're not a relationship person, and I'm not looking for that. I just felt like you should know, though, because I think we are friends now, right? And I know you'd make it good for me if we had sex." I can tell that my rambling is starting to overwhelm him. He runs his fingers through his hair and rubs the stubble on one cheek.
"You were just going to let me fuck you on my couch for your first time?"
I cross my arms over my naked chest, feeling exposed now. "I'm 21 years old. I need to have sex eventually. I thought you have sex with everyone who offers." He brings a hand back to my arm, rubbing slowly and soothingly from my shoulder to elbow. He swallows.
"Serena, I'm not going to be anybody's boyfriend."
I shake my head. "I don't want that either. I just thought—" My voice drifts off. I stare at his face, waiting for him to speak, but he doesn't. "I just really wanted to have sex with you tonight. You turn me on, Talon." He smiles at that and lets out a half laugh.
"I noticed that,"
he says. He adjusts me on his lap, so I'm sitting sideways, and he's cradling me, my head against his shoulder.
"I can't be your first, Serena. It should be someone decent who will call you afterward."
I reach for my shirt, and he helps me slide it over my head. But when I move to stand up, he pulls me back in, keeping his arm around me. I say, "You wouldn't call me? What, like you'd just sit next to me in class and pretend nothing happened?" I feel him shrug and reach for his beer again.
"That's what I usually do, I guess. I've never been with the same girl more than once."
There's a note of shame in his voice, as if the years of mindless, no-commitment sex are seemingly less glamorous. "What was your first time like?" I ask him, reaching for his beer since mine is at the other end of the sofa. It feels so intimate to share a drink with him on the couch. maybe even more intimate than what we were doing a few minutes prior.
Serena, you know how it goes with football guys. I was the fucking quarterback. It was a cheerleader, and I was 15, playing varsity. She was a senior. I think she felt bad for me. I lasted like 3 seconds. I never called her after. Fuck, Serena. I didn't even walk her home.
I start to tuck a curl behind his ear as he talks. You don't have to be like that, you know, I whisper.
You're not like the rest of them, lining up outside the locker room, ready to flash me their tits, he says. His body stiffens. You don't just want to get in my pants.
I decide not to remind him that I very much want to get in his pants. He continues.
All they know is I can throw a ball really well, and being seen with me means having a story to tell around campus, around town.
I don't really know what to say, so I kiss his forehead and remind him. I know you're the kind of guy who gives up his bed a few days after knee surgery when a hopeless drunk girl spills nacho cheese on her pants and passes out at your apartment. We sit on the couch for the rest of the episode, and I tell him I think I should go home. Talon nods and flicks off the TV. He offers to walk me home, but I insist he shouldn't because of his knee. You're not wearing your brace. I don't want to be the reason your rehab falls behind schedule, I say, shoving my beanie over my ears and zipping up my coat. I'm a big girl, and it's 2 blocks. I'll be fine, honest. Talon limps over to the door and kisses me lightly, just barely longer than a peck. I make it out of his building before I start to cry. Chapter 12. When I get back to my apartment, I really want to unload on Alyssa, just share how utterly embarrassed I feel. But her bedroom door is closed, and from the sound of things, she's got company in there. I walk quietly into my own room and sink into my bed, sobbing into my pillow. Suddenly, I'm sad about everything all at once. Upset about my parents, stressed out about my stats class, embarrassed that I let myself get this old with my virginity intact, and then acted like a weirdo with Talon. I feel my phone buzz as I'm pulling myself together, and I see a text from Talon.
You should be home by now. Make it back okay?
I wipe my nose and respond. Yeah, sorry. Forgot to text. Roommate has a noisy visitor. I add a barf emoji and take off my jeans. I snap off the light and try to just fall asleep, but Talon writes back.
Can I come over and listen to the show?
Is he serious? First he turns me down for sex, and now he's flirting about coming over to listen to my roommate get busy? As I'm trying to figure all this out, my phone starts ringing in my hand. It's him. Hello? My voice is barely above a whisper, even though there's no way Alyssa and her visitor could hear me above the thumps and screams from their side of the wall.
Let me hear, he says. I'm bored.
You can probably hear it right now, I say, laying back down, twirling my hair nervously in one hand. I don't know what to say to him, so we just sit in silence for a bit. He starts laughing after a few minutes.
They're really going at it in there.
Yeah. Another long pause. I hear him inhale before he says,
Look, Serena, I want you to know I feel weird about what happened. I mean, I know I've been hitting on you since the first day of class, and then I was the one who put on the brakes tonight. I grunt in response, not trusting myself to talk to him about it yet without crying. Things are different with you now. I've told you things, you know. You're not like some random bimbo I'll take home from a frat party.
Definitely not a bimbo. I laugh a little bit.
That's what I'm saying. Look, you deserve a nice guy to, date you and take you places and talk you down when you're spazzing out about your hot professor.
I laugh harder and he chuckles too. What if I'm not looking for that, though? I ask him. I have baggage, you know. I can't really deal with a relationship. What if I just want to get laid? He waits a beat and says,
You could have anyone do you dirty, Serena.
I start to explain to him that I also wanted my first time to be good. It feels weird describing the fumbling efforts of other guys I've made out with. But the sound of Alyssa's headboard pounding off the wall, I just kept on talking. He interrupts me and says,
Wait, so no guy even made you come before today?
I shake my head and then remember that he can't see me, so I joke. I can see why they really call you Claw. You're good at more than football, Talon. He scoffs and then sighs. The thumps from the other side of the wall have stopped with a final shriek from my roommate, and Talon says,
I guess Alyssa found someone who knows what he's doing.
I can tell he's trying to change the subject. Well, I say, I should probably let you get your rest. You have PT early on, right?
I do, yep.
There's a pause.
Hey, Serena, we're friends, right?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll see you in class.
After we hang up, I can't stop thinking about him. How earnest he was in preparing for our research project. How good his mouth felt all over my body. How hard I came when he touched me. As I toss and turn, I finally admit that I'm actually not friends with Talon. I'm falling for him. Chapter 13. A few weeks pass pretty uneventfully. Alyssa refuses to tell me who she is sleeping with. It's looking like I'll maintain my 4.0 this semester, and I'm starting to feel less embarrassed in stats with Matt Jacobs. Talon and I are scheduled to present the last class before spring break. We signed up for one of the earlier slots so he could get it over with and focus on his game. Despite my growing attraction to Talon, or maybe because of it, I'm really starting to look forward to our study sessions together. We meet twice a week to trade notes, working at strange hours to accommodate his hectic schedule. Tonight, he asked me to come over to his place again to study since it's quiet there. I arrive in the now familiar apartment and settle into the table. Talon surprises me by adding guacamole to the nachos, grinning as he slides the plate over to me. I clap my hands and say, "You remembered my weakness!" I immediately dive in, scooping a huge mouthful. He forces his hand in to scoop a chip and says,
"Pretty hard to forget after what I saw you do to the guac when we studied at Patron."
We wrap up our work pretty quickly, working cheerfully together, teasing each other in a way that feels warm and comfortable. When we reach a stopping point, I sit back in my chair and sigh. Talon puts a hand on my shoulder and asks,
"Do you have to take off, or do you want to watch TV or something?"
"I can stay a bit," I say, smiling. "What do you do with your other friends when you hang out?" Since he dialed back the sexual tension, things have been friendly and fun between us. Talon thinks for a minute and says,
"Watch football commentary and talk about football."
We both laugh at this, but I grab the remote from him and flick over to ESPN. We settle into the couch and animatedly argue with each other and the announcer as they discuss playoff scenarios. The show cuts to commercial and Talon puts the TV on mute. He tugs on one of my braids and says,
"I thought you hated talking about football."
This makes me think for a minute, but I decide to just go with my gut and say, "I like talking with you about football. I still feel really resentful about the way the sport consumed my dad." Talon drops my hair but keeps his arm on my shoulder. I feel the heat from his strong hand and I lean my head to the side against his hand. His voice is almost a whisper as he says,
"Football is life for me too."
I look into his blue eyes and see that they've gone dark with intensity. He opens up to me about the pressures he feels to overcome his injury and confesses that he's working harder on school this semester because he doesn't even know if the NFL is an option for him anymore. His ice blue eyes pierce my heart as he says,
"Football is all I've ever known, Serena. It's all I ever saw myself doing."
I'm not sure what to say to him. I rub his arm. I slide across the couch and draw him into my arms, hugging him close. I run my fingers through his hair and remind him, 12 out of 13 NFL quarterbacks have come back from ACL tears. The stats are with you, Talon, I say. Just read your own excellent research notes. I feel him nod against my chest and I keep my arms around him. A few minutes later, he turns the sound back on the TV, snuggles me tight against his chest, and leans back on the couch. I wake up what must be hours later, my limbs gone numb, entwined in Talon's arms. I struggle a bit to sit up and my heart swells looking at Talon's sleeping face. His jaw is relaxed, a rasp of stubble growing in along the strong lines of his face. His curls drape across his forehead. Sensing my movement, he wakes up and rubs his eyes for a minute.
"What time is it?"
he asks. I squint to see the clock on the TV and tell him, 4 a.m.? Shit, I have to go. Talon shakes his head.
"You're not walking home at 4 a.m. Just stay with me."
He groans and sits up, taking my hand and beginning to walk down the hall.
"I'll be a perfect gentleman, I swear."
I bite my lower lip, certain I'll never be able to fall asleep once I'm lying in Talon's bed with him in it beside me. But my body is heavy with sleepiness, and I follow him down the hall. He tosses me a pair of mesh shorts and climbs into bed, turning off the light.
"I won't look,"
he says, lying on his stomach facing the wall. I giggle, but slide out of my jeans, pull my bra off without taking off my shirt, and tug on the huge shorts. I climb into Talon's bed thinking I'll just sort of teeter on the edge, but he rolls towards me and pulls me in. I feel his chin on my shoulder, the firm strength of his long body pressed against the entire length of mine. In a few minutes, his breathing slows, and I know he's fallen asleep. My body burns with desire for him. I feel moist heat seeping from my core, and it's all I can do not to rock my hips against his groin, adjust his hand on my waist so that it instead cups the eager weight of my breasts. I think about his face when he was opening up about his fears for his future, and I know that I am hopelessly in love with Talon Kelly, and there's not a thing I can do about it. Eventually, I drift off into the gray light of dawn. Chapter 14. An alarm jolts me awake and I forget where I am. I try to sit up and feel the solid bar of Talon's arm clamping me in place. It's really real, I think. I just spent the night with Talon. It feels so intimate to wake up beside him, to have watched him sleep. I hear him grumble and his long arm reaches past me to slap the snooze bar on his alarm. The beeping stops and my heart begins to slow. I'm so exhausted, I start drifting off again. The rumble of Talon's deep voice wakes me again as he says into my hair,
I have to get up and head to the football building.
"Ugh," is all I can muster as a response. He rubs my arm and I melt into him. I just need a few more minutes. I feel the mattress shift as he climbs out of bed. I immediately notice the absence of his heat and I curl into a ball beneath the covers. He says,
You don't have to get up. I don't think we have any food that works for breakfast, 'cause they feed us, but you can sleep as long as you want.
I open one eye and stare at him. Really? You don't care? Because your bed is twice the size of mine and 80 times more comfortable. He laughs.
I can only sleep in a king size. My feet hang off the end of the mattress otherwise.
Stooping to plant a kiss on the top of my head, he says,
I'll see you in class later.
Talon closes the bedroom door behind him, and I hear his voice low in the hall, talking to CJ. The front door clicks shut. I toss and turn a few times and realize I'm not going to be able to fall back asleep. All the pent-up sexual desire I felt last night simmers back to the surface of my skin as I lie in the bed that smells like Talon. I run my hand along the pillow where his head rested a few minutes before, inhaling the soapy, minty, musky scent of him, and remembering the feeling of his body when I'd been half naked with him a few weeks before. I listen carefully to make sure he and CJ have truly. A few hours later, I climb out of bed and tidy the covers, looking for a hamper to toss the shorts. Not finding one, I decide to stick them in my bag. I grab my phone to discover about 100 texts and missed calls from Alyssa. Before I leave the apartment, I shoot off a text to Talon. You didn't even put on fresh underwear before you left. Gross. Thanks for letting me sleep in. Then I call Alyssa. She answers after one ring, shouting, Where the hell have you been? You better be calling to tell me you gave Talon your flower. No, nothing like that. But I did spend the night with him. I fill her in on the pertinent details while I walk to class. Well, that sounds confusing as hell, she says indignantly. He's making you special guacamole and cuddling all night, but he won't get you off? Screw that, Serena. You're right, it's kind of overwhelming, I tell her. Just then my call waiting beeps and I see that it's Talon. Hey, it's him on the other line. Can I call you back? If you're hanging up with your best friend for this guy, you tell him he at least needs to go down on you, she says. Yes, I'll tell him. See you after class. Definitely, I need to tell you something too. I click over to Talon's call. Hello?
You made my bed. I don't think that bed has ever been made up before.
I smile and my whole body tingles at the sound of his voice. It seemed like the least I could do after lying in there all morning. What's up? I hear him close the door and wonder what he's trying to hide from CJ. He says,
Hey, what are you doing during the Super Bowl this weekend?
Not watching it? Why, what are you doing?
Some guys from the team usually come over. We actually watch the game, though. I know some people say that, and it's a really crazy party or something. Anyway, do you want to come watch it with us?
Alyssa is definitely right. This guy is sending me confusing signals. Before I can respond, he says,
I wanted to invite you because we're friends, right?
My heart sinks at his reminder that I'm just a friend. but I swallow and say, "Yes, of course I'm your friend, Talon. I'll come over."
Awesome,
he says.
I'll see you in class.
I'm not able to focus very well for the rest of the day, caught between the warm memories of the sense of peace I felt lying in Talon's arms, and wondering what it all means when the Claw, notorious womanizer, has me in his bed all night but won't even touch me. Chapter 15. It turns out Alyssa's big secret is that she's been sleeping with CJ Smith, Talon's roommate, center for the Otters football team. Once she finally tells me, she can't seem to stop talking about it. I giggle with her for hours in the student union, while she tells me how she went into the relationship thinking it would be a quick fling, but how CJ kept calling her until he finally asked her if they could be exclusive. "Does Talon know?" I ask, trying to sound casual. She shakes her head. "CJ is supposed to be telling him soon, but we're going to their place for the Super Bowl, right?" I nod. "So everyone will find out then if they don't know already." Alyssa grins. "Now, you have like 3 days to tell me everything there is to know about football, so I don't sound like an idiot on Sunday." As I begin to explain what I know about the game, a group of girls walks over. Embarrassed, I stop talking, but Alyssa knows them from her psych class. One of them introduces herself to me, saying, "We overheard you explaining football and wondered if we could sit in." I flush, but Alyssa grabs my arm and says, "My girl Serena works in the stats booth for the Otters games. She knows her shit." She winks. One of the girls named Erin asks if I spend a lot of time with the football team. I shake my head at first, but admit that Talon Kelly is my research partner in one of my classes. Erin sits down across from me and starts talking. "I heard he's been totally different since he hurt his knee. My roommate kinda knows him from high school, and he used to sleep with anyone with a pulse. Now, she says he doesn't even get wasted at parties." Alyssa gives me the knowing look. I shrug and Alyssa says, "Well, I'm dating his roommate, and I have about 3 days to learn the game so I don't look like an idiot watching the Super Bowl with them." I start to explain different positions and tell them the names of the SCU guys who play those positions. Eventually, someone suggests we move to the bar, and before I know it, the 5 of us are closing down the place. It usually takes me a while to open up to people. I've been so scared to trust anyone since my parents died. I never had another woman around to hold my hand through social situations. And after my dad died, I felt like all anyone at school wanted to talk to me about was my dramatic orphan tale. I'd spent the last 2.5 years of college just burying my nose in books. As we walk home, I tell Alyssa, "I'm really glad housing services stuck me with you freshman year." She gives me a hug. "Same, Serena," she says, squeezing my arm. Sunday afternoon, Alyssa and I make a 7-layer dip and get ready to go to the guy's apartment for the Super Bowl. She follows my lead for once and agrees to wear a football jersey and jeans, even if it's a bit baggy. "Look," I tell her, "most people there are probably going to be rooting for the Giants, but we are going to cheer for the Steelers." For as long as I'd been alive, my dad was a Pittsburgh fan. And even in my moments of greatest loathing about football, I still at least followed the Steelers' progress in the news. I feel pretty good wearing my old Troy Polamalu jersey. I'd gotten it in middle school, so it fit pretty tightly and seemed like a good compromise for Alyssa's insistence that I needed to just remind Talon that I had a sexy body beneath my big stats brain. She swats my butt approvingly, and we set off for the party. CJ opens the door and Alyssa immediately stretches up to kiss him. "It feels good to just do that," she shouts, thrusting the bowl of dip into his arms and pulling me into the apartment. We hang up our coats, and I see CJ's eyes widen when he notices what we're wearing. As I predicted, everyone else in the room is decked out in Giants gear.
"Dude Smith, who let in those Pittsburgh fans?"
Brandon Ream, who plays safety for SCU, shakes his head disapprovingly at us, but Talon makes everyone move around until there is space for us on the couch. Brandon sees my Polamalu shirt, and his face softens.
"I guess I can agree to sit beside a Troy fan." "Shut up, Reem,"
Talon says, handing me a beer.
"You know Serena from the stats booth. I told you she was coming."
The other guys nod and gesture with their beers. CJ and Alyssa are too busy cuddling and greeting each other, but Brandon asks me,
"Care to join our pool for the game? $20 to enter. Winner takes all."
Talon shakes his head.
No way, man. She's like running the numbers about all these guys. Totally unfair if Serena enters. I'm telling you.
Brandon slides the clipboard toward me, and I rush to defend myself. Player stats don't predict the score of the game, so it's not like I have any kind of advantage. Plus, I haven't been paying a ton of attention lately, as you know. I'm not in top form. I look up and Brandon is staring while Talon is laughing at me. I feel my whole body relax as I make my guesses about the score for each quarter and toss in a wild bet that Pittsburgh will get a safety before the end of the first half. As the game starts, the guys quiet down and I feel Talon's arm slip around the back of the couch. He doesn't drape it around my shoulder, but his palm rests open and warm at the base of my neck. I stare around the room, full of his friends and teammates. Alyssa and I are the only ladies present, and she has clearly declared herself to be CJ's girlfriend. There is quiet chatter around me as the guys pass snacks around and open beers, but nobody is looking at me as if I don't belong. I see CJ and Alyssa cuddling, watching the game, and I realize how badly I want things to be that way with Talon. I want all that we've been doing, and I want so much more. I want him to ease the throbbing ache between my legs. I want to nibble on his neck as he's watching the game. I decide to be bold and move closer to Talon. He's fixed on the TV, watching the Giants quarterback intently, but doesn't flinch when I lean right against his shoulder. Chapter 16.
Dude, I can't fucking believe you called that safety in the second quarter.
Brandon is counting out 20s from the pocket of his jeans. He slaps the wad of bills into my hand. I do a little dance, excited to have won $200 on a football bet among a room full of football players. The Steelers won, and as the quarterback ran in the final touchdown for the win, I leapt off the couch screaming. Regaining my composure, I looked around the room. Talon was smiling with a crooked grin, and the other guys booed. Now, they're filing out of the apartment, slapping me on the back and giving me fist bumps.
Yo, Claw, this girl could hang any time.
One of the linebackers named Alex had gotten into a long discussion with me about Troy Polamalu during halftime. He hugs Talon and CJ and winks at me as he leaves. Talon gets up to put the food away, and I start to help him, working beside him in friendly silence. CJ and Alyssa, meanwhile, start making out on the couch. I alternate being happy for her and wishing she'd take it into the bedroom at least, especially when CJ slips a hand up her shirt. Alyssa bites his lower lip and opens her eyes, meeting mine. She gives me a look and then peels herself away from CJ's lap, pulling his hand down the hallway. Talon groans as he shoves the last of the empty beer cans in the recycling.
They're going to be making an unholy racket for at least an hour.
I touch his arm and say, "Walk me home?" Then neither of us have to listen to it. He nods and throws me my coat. He pulls on a beanie and heads out wearing a short-sleeved Giants jersey. "I never get over how you're always hot," I say. A light snow has fallen during the game and it crunches under our feet as we walk. "I'm surprised you're not wearing shorts." I've decided I'm going to touch him as much as he will let me tonight, and so I push his side playfully while I tease him about his internal furnace. He says,
"What can I say? I have a high metabolism."
"I'll say, you'd have to look like you do and eat. What are you up to right now? 6,000 calories per day?" He nods. I put my arm around his waist. "It's freezing out here for mere mortals like me." I sigh happily when he pulls me closer and walks beside me. The streets are full of laughing people walking home from Super Bowl parties. Anyone could see us. Anyone would recognize Talon Kelly here with me. But then I remember how many women Talon Kelly has walked home from parties. My heart sinks again, and I don't say anything else on the walk to my apartment. As I fish for my keys, he drops his head back against the wall.
"God, I'll probably get back there, and they'll just be getting warmed up. Did you know it was them for like this whole month?"
I shake my head. "You can hang out for a little bit, if you want." I don't want to sound desperate. I'm not going to beg him to sleep with me, but I also don't want to say goodbye to him tonight. He follows me inside and I toss my coat over a chair at the dining table. I go into the kitchen to pour 2 glasses of water as Talon sinks into the armchair by the TV. I walk over to him, standing in between his legs long enough to hand him the glass of water, and I let my hand drop to his rock-hard thigh after he takes the glass from me. I meet his eyes and watch as he swallows, his Adam's apple rising and falling. When I put my other hand on his chest, he sets down the water glass and puts his hand over mine. His voice is a whisper when he says,
"Serena, I can't."
I feel a lump in my chest and my ears are burning. "Why?" Why will you fuck anyone but me?
Don't be like that, Serena. You're not just some girl to fuck and never talk to again. God, don't you know that? I fucking care about you. You're my friend.
I shake my head and close my eyes, willing myself not to cry. Friends don't spend the night sleeping in each other's arms, Talon. I know you feel something for me. I'm not crazy. I meet his gaze, my eyes wide with anger now, my fingers squeezing into the material of his shirt. Do you not want me? Am I not hot enough for claw standards? Is that it?
What? No. Fuck. Serena, you know you're fucking gorgeous. How can you say that?
He is shaking his head but won't meet my eye. Then what is it, Talon? What are we even doing? His mouth opens and closes a few times, but no sound comes out. He puts one hand on his forehead.
If you weren't a virgin, I would have fucked you 6 weeks ago and forgotten your name an hour later. Do you know I've never, not once, slept with the same woman more than once? I would have come inside you and walked out of your apartment 5 minutes later and blocked your number. Okay? That's what I do to women, Serena.
I open my mouth to say something, but he holds up his hand.
And then I feel like a fucking piece of shit the second after I finish. My skin crawls. It's terrible. And I'm not going to do that to you.
Talon, I know you're not going to do that to me. I know that. My eyes are pleading with him, begging him to see that what we have started here is different. If you were still that person, with me, you would have fucked me that night I was drunk in your apartment. But you didn't. You got me a clean shirt and slept on the couch even though you just had surgery. He shakes his head slowly. He stares at the wall behind me, then slowly meets my gaze. His eyes are cold.
Do you want me to be your boyfriend, Serena? You want me to buy you flowers and talk about our feelings together? I'm not going to do that. I have to focus on my recovery and my football career. I can't handle a girlfriend.
He picks my hand off his leg and stands up. He puts a hand on my shoulder and says,
Find someone else to pop your cherry. You won't have any trouble.
Talon turns and walks out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. And then I really do start crying. Chapter 17. In the morning, I am too upset to go to class, so I just stay in bed. I hear Alyssa slink in around midday, and she does a double take when she finds me in my room. She pulls me into her arms, and I tell her the whole thing. Liz, I know he has feelings for me. I'm not making this shit up, I moan. Listen, you are definitely not making this up, Serena. He spent the whole fucking Super Bowl with his arm around you, in front of his best friends. That wasn't some bar party where everyone was picking up women. That shit was intimate. Thank you, I shout, indignant, but then I remember him telling me to find someone else to sleep with, and I start to cry again. I don't want to sleep with someone else, I wail. He smells so good and makes me laugh, and Alyssa, he did really wonderful things to my body, until I told him I was a virgin. She holds me a bit longer and tells me she needs to go make a call. A few minutes later, she returns and drags me out of bed. Go, shower, and then we're going to get cheesecake with Aaron and the girls. I start to feebly protest, but Alyssa has the shower running and threatens to yank off my sweatpants if I don't agree to clean up. An hour later, we're in a booth at the cheesecake restaurant with the 3 girls we'd met in the student union. Aaron, Sarah, and Mindy listen to the whole story as Alyssa tells them everything. They're polite enough not to look at me when Alyssa even includes the bit about me being a virgin. Erin whistles when she hears Talon and told me to go find another guy. She grabs the arm of our waitress and tells her we need a round of whiskey shots. My girl here with the red eyes needs a double, Erin says. As the waitress leaves to get the shots, Erin chews on the end of her straw. Serena, do you want to say fuck you to this dude and find someone else? I exhale. No, I want him. I want him to want me. I'm about to start crying again when Alyssa assures me. He does want you. I saw his face when you won the bet money. He couldn't keep his eyes off you when you were talking to Alex about the curly-haired guy. Troy Polo, I start to correct her, but she cuts me off. Erin, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think the thing to do here is for Alyssa to seem like she's taken Talon's advice, and for Talon to see her doing it. Everyone nods in agreement with Alyssa. The drinks arrive and I swallow the warm liquid in 2 gulps. Sarah pipes up that she volunteers to do some recon on the football guys, to figure out where they're going out over the next few weeks. Do not interact with him before this weekend, she says. You need to hide how much this shit is bothering you. Another round of agreement. By the time I've had a few more supportive shots, I know I'll be nursing a hangover in class the next day. But the girls assure me that this is a good thing, as I'll care less about avoiding Talon if I'm spending all my energy not puking in class. As it turns out, I get the hangover without the worry. Talon isn't in class. I have to fight the urge to text him and ask what's wrong. I don't even want to assume he's avoiding me because that would mean he thinks I'm important enough to adjust his day. At the end of the lecture, Matt walks over and asks me if everything is okay. You look a little under the weather, and it appears your research partner is missing, he says. I try to smile and shrug it off. Well, you see, I played the stats and won a Super Bowl betting pool. I might have gone a little overboard spending my earnings. Nothing contagious then. Well, good. He crosses his arms and I notice he keeps a wide distance between us. I would hate to have you as one of my research subjects, he grins. I grimace, as it's kind of a morbid joke, and I start to see why Talon always makes fun of Professor Jacobs as a super nerd. On Thursday, I get to class with Matt and see Talon is already there, but he's sitting in the center of the back row. This causes everyone to stare at him as they walk in, and then they all stare at me. People don't just change seats around. I spend the entire class feeling hot and embarrassed, as if it's somehow my fault that Talon Kelly disrupted the unspoken seating rules. He hasn't texted or made eye contact, and this hurts me the worst of all. I start to feel furious with myself for being so forward the night of the game. I miss those electric moments of teasing, flirting, cuddling with Talon. Before I had to go and say anything, we had an exciting tension build up. I found it thrilling, texting back and forth with him at night, studying with him. God, Liz, I miss him, I say a week later as we eat dinner in our apartment. She pats my hand. I know she's going over to their apartment later to see CJ. He's probably going to fuck some random girl while you and CJ are using the apartment tonight, I say, stabbing my food with my fork. Alyssa shakes her head. Nuh-uh. She swallows. CJ says he's been moping around like an asshole. I didn't tell CJ anything about what happened, I swear. But he brought it up. He said something like, I just hope Claw isn't home when you get here, baby. He's been so fucking depressing lately. Alyssa promises to discreetly gather as much information as she can, making me promise to do something involving other human beings tonight. As she leaves, my phone rings and I look down, surprised to see it's my uncle calling. Shit, I think. For the first time since he died, I'd forgotten my dad's birthday. Chapter 18. Uncle Travis, hey. Serena, I thought I'd hear from you earlier. I wanted to make sure you were doing okay, considering. I feel kind of awful. I actually forgot the day. I can hear that he's shaking ice in a glass, probably finishing his annual toast to my dad. They always used to find time to go to their favorite whiskey bar once a week, regardless of football season pressure. That's really unlike you, sweetheart. Anything wrong up there in New York? I tell him I'm starting to make some friends with some of the girls here at school. We've been going out for cheesecake, I say. Between that and keeping up my grades, I got so busy I didn't take note of the date. We talk a little about my stats class, how I'm still planning on grad school as my next step. He says, You've always got a home here. You know that, right? I know, Uncle Trav. Who knows? Pitt has a pretty good PhD program in statistics. I hear him set his glass down and he says, Hey, speaking of Pitt, I know you watched the Super Bowl. How about that game, huh? Man, your dad would have loved to watch the Steelers win it. I agree with him on this, and we talk a bit about pro football, which seems like a relatively safe subject until he tells me he had an email from Coach Burns. He remembers your dad really fondly, sweetie, and Coach asked if you were coming back to work in his booth this fall. This surprises me. Quite a lot, actually, since I told Coach I was done with football stats and sort of stormed out of the booth at the end of last season. When Talon got hurt, actually. What did you tell him when he asked about me? My uncle chuckles a bit. I told him he'd have to give you a call himself. Coach Burns calls me the next afternoon. I'd spent half the day expecting my cell to ring, so I wasn't surprised to hear his loud voice. Serena Sanders, how the hell are you, sweetheart? We exchange small talk for a bit, and he invites me to grab dinner with him at the deli on campus. He doesn't mince words, which I appreciate, and as soon as I order my turkey Reuben, he asks,
"So, what's this I hear you won't be in my stats booth anymore?"
"I told you last semester I was done," I say, twirling my napkin around and not meeting his eye. "I need to start getting my grad school applications together and taking exams and—"
"Bullshit,"
he says, pointing at me with his straw.
"Tell me what's up, kiddo."
Coach takes a long drag from his lemonade. I meet his eyes for a long time and just blurt out a lot of the things that have been weighing on me. "I don't want to be in this world," I tell him. "I saw it eat away at my dad. He was obsessed with football, with his team. He didn't have time for anything else, including me, unless I was helping out with the damn stats. It's like a dam opened up, and I'm just unloading to Coach, all about how I hated not seeing my dad, spending every day after school running around the football sidelines instead of taking ballet or gymnastics, like every other kid I wanted to be. No single guy would so much as talk to me in high school, because first, I was either the coach's daughter and then the weird, mopey orphan girl whose face was an open book of sadness." I take a deep breath. I'm really good at statistics and math, and the upper-level courses are really demanding, time-wise. I just feel like I need to focus on school now. Our food arrives, then Coach eats for a few minutes in silence while I pick at my sandwich. Then, leaning back with his arms crossed, he rubs his chin and says,
"Serena, I'm not going to say anything about your dad loving football too much or too deep. But here's what I know. You have a better vision for the game than half the guys on my staff. I hear you talk before the meeting starts, and they shut you up with the other interns. You don't just know about the numbers, Serena. You know what they mean."
I blush when he says this. I'm not going to deny he's right. The men on the coaching team and the professional stat guys at SCU seem to speak a different language than I do when it comes to knowing what the numbers say about what's going to happen down on the grass. Coach continues.
"You didn't just quit at the end of the semester. You stormed out of the booth after the Kentucky game and emailed me that you were done."
I nodded, dabbing a bit of dressing for my chin. "That game was upsetting," I say, remembering the sight of Talon going down and not getting up again, of him rolling around on the field.
"What would you have said if your advisor would have asked you to talk during the briefing before the game?"
I swallow and meet his eye. "What the hell?" I think, and straighten my shoulders. "I would have told you not to run the ball against that cornerback from Kentucky. His rate of forcing the fumble is much higher than average, and he very rarely doesn't get the sack." Coach, who had now finished his sandwich, wipes his hands and asks,
"Do you think a good coach should always play it safe?"
I stifle a small laugh. "Well," I say, leaning forward, "statistically, yes. A good coach should, but the great coaches don't, I guess. The outliers." He reaches in his pocket for his phone, and I see him pull up his calendar app.
"Why don't you come by my office next Wednesday morning, and we'll see about getting you back into the 4-credit internship for fall semester. I'll make sure Leon lets you talk at meetings, and I'll personally review your analysis for your grade. Sound fair?"
I bite my lip and twirl the ice around in my empty cup. "I don't know," I say. He laughs.
"You know I'm friends with all the athletic directors in the big schools. You tell me where you want to do your fancy math doctorate, and I'll get you funding as an analyst with the football team there."
This throws me back. I hadn't considered that I might make a career out of simply understanding football. Coach fishes in his pocket for some bills and puts the money on the table. He offers me a hand, and as we walk towards the door, he says, "You'll think about it. I'll walk you home, meanwhile, and you can tell me about these rumors I hear where you're sleeping with my quarterback." Chapter 19. I'd started having lunch a few times a week with Alyssa and CJ. I told them about my dinner with Coach Burns and how he'd asked me what was going on with Talon. CJ, suddenly animated, put his hand on my shoulder and said,
"That mopey son of a bitch is an idiot, Serena. You know he asks me about you like twice a day. What gives?"
I think about how I sobbed to Coach Burns that Talon and I had become friends, and he had balked at the idea of anything more. Coach had confirmed that CJ had told Alyssa, and what he was saying today. Talon is evidently as upset about our falling out as I am. CJ, I don't understand. I felt like he and I were getting sort of close, and I wanted to take things to the next level, and he freaked out. CJ looks at Alyssa and furrows his brow. Next level, like you wanted to move in with him? What? No. Like I want him to have sex with me instead of just being friends. I immediately blush and Alyssa laughs, curling herself up closer to CJ, which makes me blush harder because I'm so aware of their intimacy. He seems thoroughly confused. Okay, he says. Talk to me like I'm 5 years old here. You're saying all those times you were at our place studying with Claw, you were really actually studying? You haven't been swabbing his knob all semester? CJ, Alyssa swats him in the arm. Look, she says. Here's the situation. Serena is a virgin. Don't look at me like that, Serena. It's important information. She is Talon's research partner, and he, of course, has been hitting on her for months. So she decided she's going to give it up to a guy who at least knows what he's doing. Both CJ and I are squirming uncomfortably as she talks, but she plows ahead. Talon, it turns out, is a nice guy at heart and doesn't want to just be the douche who takes her virginity and never calls again. But he's also scared of commitment and doesn't want to date her. CJ starts running his fingers through his hair, looking at Alyssa like she's Oprah or something, and asks, So why is he so down? No offense, Serena. You know I think you're cool as shit. I just don't get what the problem is here. My eyes are wide, my breath shallow, and Alyssa finally adds, Well, Serena is clearly falling for Talon, man whore of the universe. And Talon, in a total shock to himself, has fallen for Serena. I actually am reading about this sort of thing in my psych class. So, he usually puts on this act like he's Mr. Tough Ladies Man because he's scared to be in a relationship. Because then he is vulnerable to getting hurt, right? My opinion is he has no idea what to do with those confusing feelings. So he yelled at her and stormed off into a cave like a hibernating bear. After Alyssa finishes her analysis, I feel simultaneously relieved and terrified. CJ admits that he's never seen Talon try to get close to a girl before. We all just really thought you guys were... you slept over sometimes. Should I say something to him? No. Alyssa and I scream this at the same time, and then we both laugh. No, Alyssa continues. I have a plan. Chapter 20. Alyssa's plan seems to involve an entirely new look for me. She's arranged for CJ and some of the other senior players to drag Talon to a dive bar off campus, where I will be hanging out with the girls and trying to pick up a townie. Alyssa walks over to my closet and yanks the t-shirt out of my hand. She rummages through my clothes and makes a sound of disapproval. You've settled into the friend zone, Serena. You need to shake things up a bit if you want to break in. She drags me down the hall to her closet and starts handing me shirts that I throw on the bed. He's seen me without a shirt on. Alyssa grabs a tight tank top with a plunging neckline and shoves it into my chest. Wear this, she says. I promise something interesting will happen tonight. The more I protest that Talon won't be affected by my risque shirt, the more she insists I wear it, along with some skinny jeans and her red shoes. Even if Talon has seen what's beneath the tank top, I promise he's going to notice other guys noticing you wearing this. Worst case scenario, you get laid by someone tonight, right? Before I can say more, she's helping me with some of her mascara and hurries me out the door. I get to the bar early, so I walk up to read what's on the tap. The place is empty, but there's a young-looking guy behind the bar cleaning glasses with a white towel. What can I get you? He asks. I squint to read the taps in the dim light and ask him to recommend something. I like wheat beer, I tell him. His face lights up and he pours me a fresh slice. It's by Otter Creek, he says. You know, because of the otters. I smile as I take a sip, shrugging out of my coat, which I drape over my arm. I notice him looking at my cleavage, and as the cold beer hits my stomach, I just let myself relax while he has a good look. I have a great rack, damn it, I think. This is really good, I tell him. I decide to hang out up at the bar until the girls. I spend the next 15 minutes or so chatting with Jim, the bartender, feeling like Alyssa probably knew what she was doing, as his gaze keeps dropping to check out my body. Finally, Aaron and crew burst into the bar, and I buy everyone around a fresh slice. Jim turns out to be really funny, and the four of us are having such a good time, I forget all about the weird plan that brought us here tonight. I don't hear the door open or notice Talon walk in because I'm laughing at Jim's story about some customers buying a keg of cheap beer just to see what happens when they shoot it with a rifle. I put down my empty glass eventually and see him out of the corner of my eye. It startles me and I jump because he's standing drawn up to his full height, with his arms crossed, his blue eyes shooting ice daggers. I can see his pulse ticking in his neck and think, so you do care if another guy is into me. I decide to ignore him, but I wave at Alyssa, who gives me a thumbs up when she sees Talon's face. I see her nudge CJ, who nods but keeps talking to the other guys on the team. They all seem to be having a good time, except for Talon. It's harder for me to pay attention to the conversation, especially when I'd rather be talking to Talon, but I manage to keep up the facade while we hang out at the bar. That is, until Talon comes up to buy a drink. I send him my best smile and he relaxes slightly, but still looks stiff and imposing. "Talon?" I say. "It's been a while." As I turn my gaze up to meet his, I can feel Jim's eyes on me, and I like it. He sits beside me and starts chugging his beer. Talon wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and says,
"What's with that guy?"
as Jim walks down the bar to serve another customer. I shrug and turn to start talking with Aaron and Mindy, but Talon grabs my arm.
"Fuck, Serena. He's staring right at your tits."
Talon growls.
"What the hell are you wearing, anyway?"
This gives me pause and I glare at him. What's that supposed to mean? Just because I wore something other than a t-shirt today, you think you can come act like an asshole? I grit my teeth and look into his eyes, which are still hot with emotion. I start to drink my beer quickly, and Jim walks over to take the empty glass. He throws his towel over his shoulder and asks,
"Everything okay over here?"
"We're good," Talon says, not looking away from me, his voice short. I hate that I'm getting such a thrill from this Neanderthal act of his, but I really enjoy knowing that Talon is upset another guy finds me attractive. I begin to hope that Alyssa was right, that I might still stand a chance with Talon after all. "Worst case scenario, you get laid tonight," she'd said. I know I don't really want to go home with Jim, though. I want the brooding, angry guy next to me to want me. When Jim walks back down the bar, I lay into Talon. "Listen, you are the one who turned me down, okay? I like being friends with you, and I really like working on this project with you. But I also want to get laid before I turn gray. You don't get to not fuck me and also interfere when another guy wants to." I tap Aaron on the shoulder and shout, "I'm out of here. I'll text you guys tomorrow." I rip open my purse and, finding a pen, I scribble my number on a bar napkin and start walking toward Jim. I can hear Talon shoving his stool away as he tries to stand up, so I slide the napkin to Jim. "Call me sometime," I say. Jim cocks a brow towards Talon, saying, "Doesn't look like Tarzan would like that too much." I try to be cool and smile. I wave to Jim and walk out of the bar. I can hear Talon coming after me, and I speed up my pace. His legs are a foot longer than mine, so he catches up to me quickly.
"Serena,"
he yells, his voice thick and yearning. Before I know it, he pulls me against him and backs me into a brick wall. He tucks my hair behind my ears and drops his head, locking his lips against mine in the cold February night. Chapter 21. An eternity passes as I melt into Talon's kiss, fierce and urgent. I press my body against his, savoring the feel of his warm body as he softly moans into my mouth. Not until I shiver does he break the kiss. His eyes are wild, a piercing blue, but he strokes my cheek with his thumb.
"You're cold,"
he says. I shake my head and lean back. "Talon," I say, "you can't start this if you don't mean to finish." I close my eyes as his thumb reaches my lips, gently rubbing along the tender line of my lower lip. My mouth feels swollen from kissing him so passionately. Our separation over the past few weeks has only made me want him more, and I feel a rush of moisture seep into my panties despite the chill in the air.
"Serena,
He swallows.
I told you it always feels wrong. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and feel that way, to do that to you."
I can feel his heart pounding in his chest, see his pulse still ticking in the vein in his neck. I reach up and trace the line with my finger, trying to soothe him. "I'm scared too, Talon. You know it's really hard for me to trust anyone after what I've been through. He's so much taller than me. I can't reach his mouth to kiss him, so I take his hand and gently kiss his palm. I know that you care about me, and I care about you." I let my tongue slowly wander the length of his thick index finger, and I briefly suck on the tip, causing him to gasp. "I want you, Talon." He grabs my hand and then takes off down the street at a jog, pulling me along behind him. We run the block and a half to his apartment. I'm gasping for breath as he pulls me up the stairs and down the hall. Once we're inside, Talon pulls me into his arms again. Still winded from our fight, I'm sucking in oxygen, breathless, as he lowers me to the ground, peppering my neck and chest with kisses. Chapter 22. Is it always that intense? I ask an eternity later. I feel Talon slide out of my body and I groan, missing the feeling of connection with him.
Shit, Serena, did I hurt you?
Talon's face is etched with concern. I reach up to pull him close and kiss him deeply. I just already miss feeling you inside me, I say. As I shift my body slightly, though, I realize I do feel a bit tender. He sees me wince and raises an eyebrow. It hurts a little, I admit. Talon peppers a trail of kisses down my body to my collarbone, but then climbs out of bed.
I'll be right back,
he says, walking to the door.
Don't go anywhere.
I can tell he's joking because I feel like I could pass out and sleep for an eternity. I close my eyes until I hear him come back, and then I feel him washing me with a warm, soft washcloth. I say, that feels nice. And then he climbs into bed beside me, snuggles me close against his body, still naked. Talon turns off the light, and I feel him nestle his chin into the dip of my shoulder, his breath warm and comforting.
It's not,
he says. I roll over a bit to look at him, my brow furrowed in confusion.
It's not always that intense. This was.
His voice trails off as he searches for the right words. I reach up for a kiss, silencing him, and then I drift off to sleep in his arms. I wake up sometime later to feel him hard against my bottom. I can't tell whether he's still asleep until I tilt my hips. In response, I feel his hand drop down between my legs. Wordless, gently, he begins to massage my clit. I wrap my arm around his neck, pulling him to kiss me, and I feel him enter me from behind. This is a fully new sensation. Here in the dark, snuggled against him, I am overcome by passion. As Talon penetrates me from behind, I feel him stroking some undiscovered magical spot inside my body. "Oh!" I gasp as he begins to flick my clit. He thrusts faster, holding me against his body until I feel him shudder. I moan in his hands and we come together, shaking and panting, the warmth of his release spraying inside me as his dick swells, impossibly large in my body. He breathes,
Serena,
against my neck, and I turn my head in response, kissing him until we both melt back into sleep. In the morning, I feel happier than I've felt in years. The gray light creeps through Talon's blinds, and I roll over in his arms, kissing his cheek. "Don't you have PT or weight training or something?" I ask him. He grumbles without opening his eyes.
Not today.
I trace the line of his jaw with a finger, enjoying the look of contentment on his face as he tries to sleep. I was expecting to feel different after my first time, and I do, but not because I just had sex with some guy. I feel more complete somehow, as if I'd been missing this connection with Talon and didn't fully understand that. "Hey," I say to him. He opens his eyes and his gaze meets mine. "How's it feel to bang the same girl twice?" He smiles and I feel him pull me more tightly against him, and then I feel his cock hardening between us, thick against my belly.
It feels amazing to make love to you, Serena,
he whispers, kissing me. He nips at my earlobe and says,
I don't ever want to stop.
Chapter 23. The next few weeks fly by in a blur. I spend almost every minute of my time with Talon, apart from when I'm in class or he's at football. And almost every second I spend with Talon, we're naked. We've moved our research sessions to his bedroom, where he proves agile enough to type and strum my body into ecstasy. I've given up even trying to concentrate on work until after we have sex. Our presentation is in 1 week, and I try to email Matt to make an appointment with him to review our notes one last time. I say try because Talon is biting at my neck as I'm typing. "Talon, stop! We already had sex twice today." I swat him away so I can finish the email. "Don't you ever get enough?" I shriek as he flattens me down against the sheets, blowing a raspberry kiss on my neck.
Never, he says. I can never get enough of you.
but he kisses me once more and climbs out of bed. While he's getting dressed, I set a time with Professor Jacobs. Hey, Talon, can you make a 1:45 meeting with Matt to review our draft? I start to tug on my own clothes, knowing Alyssa is going to kill me if I miss another dinner with her. Talon, his head half in the closet, says,
It'll be tight, but I can come from watching film in the morning. Will you add the meeting into my phone for me?
It's such an intimate request, a small thing like that, but his phone is his personal space. I smile when I see that he has set a picture of us as his lock screen and type in, meeting smokin' hot girlfriend at Professor Jacobs' office, into his calendar for tomorrow. When we walk into the hall so I can leave, CJ and some of the guys are playing a video game on the couch.
Nacho!
He yells to me. I flip him off playfully and make to walk out the door, but CJ beckons me over. He pulls me down and pecks me on the cheek, grinning, and says,
Send that to my girl for me.
He winks at Talon, who isn't sure how to respond, but everyone laughs. Talon walks me to the hall where he kisses me long and deep.
Why can't you come back and sleep over?
He pouts, rubbing my shoulders. I told you, it's girls' night. Alyssa and I are going to watch garbage television and talk about you and your roommate. I peck him on the nose and rub his cheek. But I'll miss you very much, my claw. He growls and I laugh, but I know if I don't peel myself away, I'll never make it home to my roommate. Alyssa and I spend the evening catching up and making plans for our spring break trip. Since both of our boyfriends have 2-a-day football practices the whole week, we decided to leave them behind and fly to the beach together. My uncle even shared his hotel points with us, so of course we told Aaron, Sarah, and Mindy that they could crash in our suite. It'll be my first trip with friends, and talking about it with Alyssa leaves me feeling very excited in a way I haven't known since my dad died. By next morning when I walk to Matt's office, I'm feeling like I have my life put together. Talon is feeling really confident about his knee and looking forward to the NFL draft at the end of April. We haven't talked about things long term, but most cities with professional teams have big universities with statistics programs. So I know I can take Coach Burns up on his offer to help me with my grad school acceptance. I finally have friends, classes are going well. I open the door to my professor's office, feeling like I know my path forward, like I have my shit together for the first time since I lost my parents.
Serena, hey, come on in,
he says, closing the door behind me. I sit down and Matt surprises me by taking the seat next to me instead of sitting in his desk chair. Talon said he was coming right from film, I start to explain, so he might be a bit late. Matt grunts and tosses a folder onto his desk.
Well, we've come to expect that, haven't we?
Something feels off about this meeting, and the alarm bells start going off. But I remind myself that Talon did waltz in late and disrupt class for the first few weeks. I look up at Matt, waiting for him to continue.
Serena, I gotta say, I was really impressed by your work here,
he says.
This is all excellent. Seriously, my grad students at Dartmouth aren't writing this well.
Really? He nods, leaning forward.
Truly, you have a brilliant mind for statistics.
Beaming, I begin to tell him how Talon and I worked together so well on this paper. The whole thing flowed so well for us once we found a topic we both felt passionate.
Serena, I get it.
He interrupts me and puts a hand on my knee. I stare down at his hand and my body turns to stone. He continues.
You don't have to cover for him. I told you at the beginning of the semester, I knew it would be you picking up the slack for this guy.
I start shaking my head. No, I was so wrong. Matt Jacobs' fingers begin to rub my leg. I flush, not sure what to do. My voice is a whisper when I say, I misread him. A few months ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity. Hell, I'd thrown myself at Professor Jacobs right here in his office. But now this all feels wrong. I feel violated by his hand on my leg, and I wish I could figure out how to get out of this room. Matt begins to lean toward me, and I recoil, but just as I reach for his hand to remove it from my leg, I hear the door to his office click open. Talon stands in the doorway looking down at Matt Jacobs' hand on my leg, at my hand on his hand, at him leaned close to my body. I see his face change, the anger flood through his body. His mouth dangles open in shock.
What the fuck?
I leap from the seat, unfrozen at last, and rush toward Talon, who shakes his head. He holds out his arm to stop me.
Do not fucking touch me, Serena.
He starts to walk away. Matt coughs and stands.
Mr. Kelly, I think perhaps you misinterpreted something and...
Fuck you. Talon's stare would freeze lava.
You don't think I can tell someone's fishing for pussy?
He whips his head toward me.
You got what you wanted, didn't you? Practice with me until you can finally bag this guy's dick.
He storms down the hall. I don't even look back as I sprint after him, screaming his name. But Talon is a foot taller than me and moving fast. He's out of sight before I get outside the building. Chapter 24. Hours later, I'm sobbing in Alyssa's lap at home. She's on the phone with CJ, who confirms that Talon was in a black mood at practice and hasn't come home. I wail to Alyssa. He thinks I was playing him, using him somehow. He doesn't really think that, sweetie. He's just angry and doesn't know what to do. How do you know? Because he loves you, and that terrifies him. She is so sure of her words, so utterly confident. She strokes my hair until I fall into an exhausted sleep on the couch, where I stay for the next 3 days. I call Talon approximately 756 times. Okay, not approximate because my phone apparently keeps track of how many times I dial each number. Eventually, the girls all barge into the apartment and throw open the blinds. Mindy opens the sliding door to the balcony, even though it's chilly outside, and Alyssa pulls me onto the floor. What the hell, assholes? I moan into the hood of Talon's sweatshirt, which I haven't taken off. Serena, you're gross. Alyssa nudges me with her foot. We leave for our trip soon. You haven't packed, and you stink. The other girls nod. I hear someone working the blender, and they hand me a smoothie. Not until I begin drinking it do I realize how hungry I am. Alyssa charges ahead, saying, It's obvious Talon has your number blocked, so stop trying to call him. You don't owe him an apology because some asshole sexually harassed you in his office. I bite my lip and sigh. It's not harassment, Alyssa. Mindy interjects. Actually, it's the exact definition of sexual harassment. I look up at her. Everyone in the room stares at me with concern. But I hit on him earlier in the semester. I wail. I harassed him first. Mindy shakes her head. Doesn't matter. He's a professor and you're a student. He has a code of conduct and he broke it, and this isn't your fault no matter what you did earlier in the semester. Mindy explains that I have a whole range of options that all include telling the dean that my professor touched my leg. Look, I say, I just want to finish the damn project and be done with this class. You guys are right. I stink. Let me shower and I promise I'll start packing for Florida. I drain my smoothie glass and climb into the shower. When I emerge from the bathroom, everyone is still milling around the apartment, doing dishes and vacuuming the couch where I had been nesting. Thank you all for being here for me, I say. I start crying again, and this time because I realize I still really have my act together, apart from this one issue with class and my boyfriend not speaking to me. I have true friends. A few days later, I still haven't heard a single peep from Talon. CJ told Alyssa he comes in late at night, walks directly to his room, and slams the door. He's apparently been a huge jerk at practices, screaming at everyone for anything less than perfection. CJ thinks he's been spending every spare second in the weight room, conditioning for the NFL combine. So as I walk to class, I dread making eye contact with Matt Jacobs. I have no idea whether my partner will show up for our presentation, and I'm not sure how I'll respond to him if he does. I have no idea what to do with any of my emotions, so I just drag my feet. I pause outside the door and think of Coach Burns delivering his pregame speech. Imagine yourself doing everything right, he always tells the guys. Close your eyes and see yourself winning. And so I do. I close my eyes, imagine the presentation going off beautifully. My breath hitches as I imagine hugging Talon while the class applauds. I feel a presence behind me and I open my eyes, turning to face the wall of Talon's chest. I stare into his eyes, which are cold and emotionless. He clenches his jaw. I wasn't sure if you'd come, I say. He shrugs.
I'm here for my grade, nothing else.
He walks past me and sits in the back of the room. Matt looks up from his desk. When he sees Talon, I note that he quickly looks away. The whole atmosphere in the room is thick and uncomfortable. I sit in my seat, sweating until Matt introduces us and says we should begin our presentation. Talon is wooden as he hands out the flyers we printed. He sets the poster on the rim of the whiteboard at the front of the room. Once he starts talking, he seems animated, but I can tell he's using his television voice. He's got the plastic smile and the slick tone of voice he uses with the reporters in the post-game interviews. As I look around the room, I don't think anyone can tell that Talon has been in turmoil. Maybe it's just me in turmoil, I think. Maybe I misread everything about his feelings for me. When I speak, I stutter and hesitate. The research I know like the back of my hand slips from my mind, and I have to page through my notes. I feel myself crashing and burning as I deliver my portion of the project. I make the mistake of looking up at Talon and feel his penetrating glare. He's angry, and I tell myself it's because I'm spoiling our presentation. Months of work for this project that's 80% of our grade, and I'm crashing and burning. Just great, Serena. Talon takes back over, his smarmy TV voice as ever. I slump beside him watching him talk, and something shifts inside me. I become angry. I did nothing wrong here. All I ever did for the past few months is share my honest feelings with Talon Kelly. I made one dumb mistake back in January with Professor Jacobs, and then he got all handsy with me in his office. And this is my future career? Why am I letting anything get in the way of this presentation? When I hear my cue to speak again, I am laser focused. I smile warmly at the other students and set down my notes. I gesture to our poster, and suddenly I am just sharing information with friends, talking about my passions. I can feel myself kicking ass. As I wrap up the presentation, the class erupts into applause. Matt coughs and thanks us. He's in the middle of explaining that we will have an email with his comments when Talon grabs the poster and storms out of class. Chapter 25. Tell me again what the email said. Alyssa sits half propped up in her lounge chair, slurping a pina colada. She nudges the pitcher closer to me with her foot. I sigh and pour another glass, explaining again that Professor Jacobs' email to Talon and me was super weird. It just said excellent research, 100%. He is such a slee, Serena. I think you should report him. What if you end up at Dartmouth? Erin actually just found out she was accepted into the chemistry PhD program at Dartmouth. I sure as hell hope I don't have to interact with him when I'm there. She scoffs. Erin, I love you, but I'm not going to apply to Dartmouth's stats program. I don't know where I'll be going now, but it's not there. I actually owe Coach Burns a phone call. He wants to talk about the details of the green and gray game and needs me to tell him who to bug about getting me into graduate school. Did I tell you guys Coach Burns offered to fly me back first class if I left a day early to meet with coaching staff before the game? You said yes, I'm assuming. Sarah is still mad about sitting in the middle seat the entire flight down here. First class a day early rather than crammed back in the fart box with the rest of the hungover undergrads? Sign me up. I actually haven't gotten back to him. I hesitate. I was going to back out of doing stats for the game. No. Mindy stands with her hands on her hips and glares at me. What? No. You are not throwing away your opportunities because of these men. First, you changed your life goal of doing grad school at Dartmouth because of some sleazebag. And now you're skipping an amazing opportunity because you don't want to face Talon, who, by the way, has no right to be angry with you and is a total baby for not even taking your calls to discuss it. Sarah and Erin and Alyssa start applauding as Mindy sinks back into her lounge chair. I sigh. I don't even really like football, guys. Bullshit! Alyssa slurs her speech, drunk from rum and too much sun. Alyssa snatches my phone from me, and before I can scramble for it back, I see that she's pulled up Coach Burns' number. She presses call and cocks an eyebrow at me. Do you want me to talk to him, or are you going to accept his offer? 3 days later, I'm back in the athletic department at SCU for a meeting with Coach Burns. I hear him in his office growling at someone. Based on his tone, I assume it's one of the players. I decide to wait in the hall rather than knock as his voice increases in volume. I startle when I hear the door open. Coach Burns yells,
Now get the hell out of my office, Kelly, and quit being a goddamn moron.
I freeze. Talon meets my eye. I catch a flicker of pain in his face before his expression turns back to stone. He begins to walk away as Coach sticks his head into the hall.
Serena, sweetheart, I was just talking about you.
He puts an arm around my shoulder and ushers me inside. You were talking about me? To Talon? He nods and sits on the edge of his desk, arms crossed, legs crossed at the ankle.
When I get a grade report and see that my star quarterback has 100% in any class, I get real suspicious, Cupcake. Claw may not be a dunce, but I don't give these boys enough free time to earn any sort of 100%.
Our presentation was amazing, Coach, and...
Oh, he assured me he'd worked very hard on it. So I phoned up his professor to ask about his glowing example of statistics work for my star quarterback, and I caught a whiff of something real foul during that conversation. Now, Serena, I know I didn't fart into my good office chair. Want to tell me why I'm smelling skunk here?
I shake my head at him. He plows on ahead.
Kelly didn't want to talk about it either. Want to hear my theory before we talk shop for the green and gray game?
Not particularly, Coach. If it's all the same to you, I'd really like to...
Tough shit, kiddo. Here's what I think, and you interrupt me if I get something wrong. Despite my better advice, you and Kelly have been bumping uglies this whole semester. You also prepared a class presentation that was probably really good, but not worthy of an A+. Am I on the right track so far?
I nod, not meeting his eye. He inhales through his nose.
So then I have to ask myself, why is this pansy from a fancy Ivy League school giving an A+ to my quarterback? He's just here for a few months. He's under no pressure from our boosters. Hell, the dean wasn't even sure who I was talking about when I asked if someone was telling teachers to pass my boys in the spring semester. Oh yes, I made a lot of calls about this, sweetie pie. And then I get to thinking, just maybe Talon Kelly saw something he wasn't supposed to see.
I start pulling at my cuticles, fiddling with the seam in my jeans. I feel myself flushing. Coach sets a hand on my shoulder, and I look up into his face.
Serena Sanders, I have known you since the day you were conceived. You tell me right now if that professor did something to you that he ought not have done.
Once again, Coach's speech unleashes a hurricane inside me. I start sobbing, and he pulls me in for a hug.
It was nothing,
I whisper.
He made a pass at me, but Talon saw, and he thought...
I choke down my tears and look up at Coach Burns.
He thinks I was just using him to practice so I could seduce Professor Jacobs.
Come on here, Sanders.
He hugs me into his chest, and I smell the bubblegum and Old Spice aftershave that reminds me so much of my father. I sob all the tears I'd held back over spring break until Coach pats my hair and says,
I'm gonna take care of this.
My eyes are wild as I glare up into his face.
No, please. I just want to forget this happened.
He shakes his head at me.
No can do, kiddo. You don't stay in business coaching D1 football by covering up scandal. This is not my first rodeo with sexual harassment. Now, what grade do you think you and Talon should have earned based on the presentation you gave? Tell me honest.
I sigh, remembering how I flubbed through the first half of my portion.
B or B+?
I sigh and Coach nods, jotting a note. He hops up and walks around to sit in his evidently fart-free chair.
Now, let's talk about Saturday, shall we?
Chapter 26. On game day, I wake up at 6 and slip into my official SCU staff polo. I smile at my reflection as I slide the lanyard around my neck with my stadium credentials. I duck into Alyssa's room to make sure she has the pack of tickets for Aaron and Sarah and Mindy. CJ arranged for Alyssa to sit with his parents, but I scored some 50-yard line seats for the girls. Coach had promised that our Jacobs resolution, as he called it, would be as painless as possible. He made a call to the dean suggesting what had potentially happened without spelling it out. He told the dean I was not interested in pressing charges, but that the SCU Otters need to keep everything documented to avoid penalties against the team. We were assured that Jacobs would not be returning to SCU. Talon's and my grades were adjusted to B+, but neither of us had to return to the class for the remainder of the semester. Then I had sat with Coach for hours watching tape and talking to him about what I'd observed about the different players all fall semester. When he met with the stat team and the coaching staff prior to the game, he asked me to lead off the meeting discussion. I blushed looking at the shocked faces of my former advisor who sat slack-jawed as I presented my thoughts on different player combinations. I watched the stadium fill with fans for my place in the booth high above the 50-yard line. My heart aches with yearning as I see Talon warming up down below, encouraging the sophomore quarterback who will be taking his place next year, regardless of what happens with the draft. I hate that I have no idea how he did at the NFL Combine, that I have no idea where he's predicted to go in the draft in a few weeks. I shake myself out of my thoughts and get to work. Suddenly, the world melts away and all that remains are the players, the game, and the numbers that never lie. Each spiral pass that Talon throws into CJ's outstretched hands feels inevitable, and I glow with happiness when Coach catches my eye and winks. CJ is in top form with no hint at all of the injury that had him limping in an immobilizing brace just months earlier. High is a warrior on the field directing the other players with grace. I can see how he sees the space, reads the defense. He runs as easily as he passes the ball, once even ducking under the diving tackle attempt of a rookie who forgot that nobody is supposed to tackle the quarterback in the green and gray game. The freshman glances off Talon's sturdy body and he soars like the eagle he's named after, gaining 20 yards before being driven out of bounds. As the game clock winds down, I decide I can't be up in the stats booth a minute longer. I have to find him. I am tired of going through my days without him. I miss the smell of him, the protective warmth of his embrace. I miss joking with him and talking about my dreams and hopes for the future. I'm running toward the locker room, mentally cataloging the reasons I miss him when I crash into someone massive. I ricochet off the immense figure before me, skidding across the floor in my khakis.
Serena, fuck, are you okay?
Talon, larger than life in his pads and cleats, stoops to help me to my feet. I'm so surprised to see him that I can't speak, what she interprets as me being injured. He starts to look over my body until I say, "I'm fine, Talon. I was looking for you." He meets my eyes and says,
I was looking for you too. I saw you in the booth today.
I touch his leg long and hard, his thigh muscles bulging from the tight football pants. "You were better than ever out there, Talon." He reaches out a hand to stroke my cheek, and I close my eyes, a single tear leaking free and rolling down onto his thumb.
I was so wrong, Serena, and I almost lost you.
I shake my head. "You never lost me, Talon. I've been right here."
I owe you so much more than an apology, baby. When Coach told me everything, when he explained what you had to do to get rid of that asshole, Jacobs, CJ had to hold me back. I got it in my head I was going to kill him for touching you. Then I'd get drunk and convince myself you wanted him, that you were just using me to get to him.
I try to interject and tell him he's wrong, how I never thought about any other man once I was with him, but he says,
Shh. I know. I was an idiot. I know that you are all in, baby. And then that fucking scared me more, because I'm all in too. I'm 100% here for us, and I have never been more afraid of anything in my entire life. God, letting myself open up to you, that scares me more than hurting my knee ever did. And
Talon. I put my hands on his shoulders. He raises an eyebrow.
Yeah.
Shut up and kiss me. Epilogue. 6 months later.
Sanders.
Coach Adam roars into the headset from the sidelines at Sanford Stadium. "Right here, boss," I say, waving to him from the booth.
You feeling good about our special teams? I don't like the looks of that punter from Notre Dame.
I smile and reassure him the numbers don't lie. A month into my PhD program, and I've already earned the trust of the coaching staff here. Coach Burns bragged about me to a bunch of D1 coaches, and I ended up getting accepted into 6 different graduate programs. As soon as Talon was drafted by the 49ers, though, I knew I was moving to California. I'll never forget the day of the draft, sitting at Talon's parents' house with him, watching it on television with his agent on speakerphone. He says he was more nervous telling me he loves me for the first time, but I'm pretty sure that was about as tense as I'll ever see him. My graduate assistantship keeps me with the football team pretty much throughout the season, which means I'm not as lonely missing Talon now that he's gone all the time for practices. We've moved into our Bayside condo near Palo Alto, but have barely unpacked. I keep reminding Talon we have the rest of our lives to get settled in, so it's okay if we do it one box at a time. I check my phone at halftime and see a dozen missed calls and texts from him, but I don't have a chance to respond until the game is over, and I've typed up my analysis. I'm about to lock the door of my office. I still get a thrill when I see that I have my own office, when I feel someone slide up behind me in the hallway.
I can't wait another second to taste you,
he whispers. I know it's Talon. The smell of him, minty and familiar, fills the air around me, and I feel his warm hands on my arms. He pulls me against his body, kissing my neck, and I feel every hard inch of him. His chest is like granite since he's been working out with the NFL staff, and his cock presses into my lower back. I spin around in his arms and kiss him. Shouldn't you be watching film or getting ready for your first professional football game? He moans against my lips.
That's what I did all day. Now I need to eat and restore my strength.
I shriek as he scoops me up, my legs around his waist, and barges through the door into my office. Afterward, as we're getting dressed to leave my office, Talon stops me before I put my crumpled polo back on.
I know you need to wear those colors here at work, babe, but I came down to bring you something for tomorrow.
He hands me a custom Kelly jersey cut to fit me perfectly. I smile, imagining wearing it tomorrow as I sit in the stands to cheer for him. He touches the edge of my nose, saying,
No analyzing numbers tomorrow, right?
Talon helps me into the shirt.
I want you there watching me, wearing my jersey, and then I want to take you back to our house and spend the rest of the night with you wearing only my jersey.
I laugh and stand, gripping the doorknob. I gesture for him to step into the hall as I lock the door behind us. I tell him, only if you promise to let me christen the stats booth at your stadium with you next time. This has been Deep in the Pocket, a football romance. Stone Creek University, Book 2. Written by Lainey Davis. Narrated by Crystal Crockett. Copyright 2017 by Lainey Davis. Production copyright by Lainey Davis.